When the world drowns in violence, why does destiny choose just one family to carry the light? A legacy passed from Abraham to Isaac, then to Jacob, whose 12 sons birthed an entire nation. But starvation eventually drove them deep into Egypt, seeking protection from Joseph, the very brother they once betrayed. Generations passed, the old pharaohs died, and the wandering family that once arrived as humble guests grew into a force the empire feared. This is where the story of Exodus truly begins. These are the names of the sons of Israel who entered Egypt alongside their father Jacob, each bringing his own household. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. Dan and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. 75 souls in total, all born from Jacob's line, their entire existence bound by an ancient promise. Joseph was already there, but eventually he died, along with his brothers and that entire generation. Yet the descendants of Israel were surprisingly fertile. They multiplied, swarmed, and grew remarkably strong, spreading across the land like seeds, sown in rich soil, flourishing until the entire country was crowded with their presence. Then a new Pharaoh ascended the throne, knowing nothing of Joseph's legacy. He eyed the foreigners not with honor but with deep dread, warning his inner circle. Look at them. These Israelites are far more numerous and powerful than us. We must outsmart them now, before they multiply more. If war breaks out, they might side with our rivals, fight us, and escape. So the Egyptians appointed brutal overseers to bend their backs with heavy labor under cruel whip. The children of Israel, who were once free shepherds, became bitter slaves forced to build the great cities of Pithom and Ramses. Yet the harder they were oppressed, the faster they multiplied, and the more they spread. Their growth became a threat, their numbers a provocation, and the Egyptians grew deeply embittered. With merciless force, they drove the Hebrew workforce to the absolute limit, mixing clay and straw under the burning sun, baking heavy bricks, and sweating in the fields all day long to dusk. They broke their lives with brutal work, offering no rest and showing no mercy. Then Pharaoh devised a darker, more secret cruelty, calling upon the Hebrew midwives, pious women named Shiphrah and Puah. He ordered them, saying, "When you assist Hebrew mothers in childbirth, if the baby is a boy, kill him right there. But if it is a girl, let her live." Yet these midwives feared Elohim far more than Pharaoh. Through quiet rebellion, they ignored his command and kept the newborn boys alive, allowing them to draw breath. When the furious Pharaoh summoned them, he demanded to know, "Why have you disobeyed me and let these boys live?" The brave midwives replied, "Those Hebrew mothers are not like Egyptian women. They are strong. Before we even arrive, they have already delivered." Whether born of cleverness or pure courage, this answer halted the king's wrath. Because they honored Elohim, the Almighty blessed them with their own families and homes. Their sacred devotion bore fruit even inside an empire of death. But the tyrant was not finished. Seeing his plans foiled, he issued a darker decree to the entire nation. He commanded all his subjects, saying, "Every son born to the Hebrews you must throw into the Nile River. But let the daughters live." The very waters that fed Egypt became a mass grave, and grief began to rise like steam from the river. During this dark time, a man from the house of Levi married a daughter of his tribe, and in the shadow of national tragedy, she became pregnant. When she finally held her newborn son, she saw something extraordinary in him. For 3 long months, she hid him away, keeping him quiet in the dark. But when concealment became impossible, she wove a tiny basket from papyrus reeds, sealing it with tar and pitch, and gently placed, "Who is the hidden child within us?" Her shaking hands placed the basket deep in the Nile reeds, a massive river that had swallowed countless sons. From afar, his sister kept quiet watch, her eyes frozen and waiting, desperate to see what would happen to him. Then down at the water, Pharaoh's daughter arrived to bathe her handmaids walking along the shore. Nestled in the reeds, she spotted the tiny basket and sent her servant, who pulled it from the currents. When the lid opened, a Hebrew baby lay inside, and he was crying. Touched with pity, she whispered, This is one of the Hebrew children. Suddenly his sister stepped forward with quiet courage and asked, "Should I go find a Hebrew mother to nurse this baby for you?" Pharaoh's daughter agreed, so the young girl ran and brought back the baby's real mother. Pharaoh's daughter told her, "Take this child and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the mother took her boy, nursing him in her arms once more, protected this time by royal privilege. When the boy grew older, they brought him back to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her own son. She named him Moses, saying, "Because I pulled him out of the water." Years passed, and Moses grew into a man who went out to see his own people, the sons of Israel. He watched their heavy labor and saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own blood. Moses glanced this way and that, and seeing nobody around, he killed the Egyptian, burying his body deep in the desert sand. The following day he returned and found 2 Hebrews fighting. He asked the one who started it, "Why are you beating your own brother?" But the man whipped around and snapped back, "Who appointed you our leader and judge? Are you planning to kill me just like that Egyptian?" Panic gripped Moses, and he realized with dread, the secret is out. Everyone knows. When Pharaoh found out, he ordered Moses killed. But Moses fled far from the king's wrath, escaping into the desolate land of Midian. There beside a well he sat down. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They arrived to draw water, filling the troughs for their father's sheep. But aggressive shepherds drove them off. Moses stood up to defend them, saved the women, and watered their flock himself. When they got home, much earlier than usual, their father Reuel asked them, "How did you finish your work so quickly today?" They replied, "An Egyptian saved us from the local shepherds, and he even drew water for us and helped feed the sheep." Reuel asked, "Where is he? Why did you leave?" The stranger behind go, invite him to share a meal. So Moses agreed to stay with them. Reuel gave him his daughter Zipporah in marriage. Before long, she gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, "I have become an outsider, living in a strange land." Years rolled by. The king of Egypt died, yet the heavy burdens of Israel never eased. Their painful groans rose up from the depths of their slavery. Their desperate cries for help reached God, and he heard their weeping. He remembered his ancient covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God looked down at the suffering children of Israel. He saw, and he understood. Meanwhile, Moses lived as a quiet shepherd, tending the sheep of his father-in-law Jethro, Midian's priest. One afternoon, driving the flock far across the lonely wilderness, he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. The peak was barren, silent, and ancient. There, amidst the dust, the invisible world burst through. An angel of the Lord appeared to him like a roaring fire, burning hot from the core of a thorn bush. Moses was transfixed. The bush was ablaze, crackling with heat, yet never turning to ash. Overwhelmed with wonder, Moses murmured to himself, "I must go closer and look at this incredible sight, why the wood does not burn up." When the Lord saw him step closer to watch, God called out to him from the heart of the fire. "Moses, Moses," he replied. "Here I am." Then the voice warned, "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, because the ground where you stand is holy." Then the voice spoke again. "I am the God of your father Abraham's God, the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob." Trembling at the sound, Moses hid his face, terrified to look upon the divine. Then the Lord spoke, "I have witnessed the deep suffering of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries against cruel masters. I feel their pain. Now I have come to rescue them from Egypt, to lead them out of that dark place, to a vast, fertile country, overflowing with milk and honey, the homeland of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. The desperate cry of Israel has reached me, and I have seen their brutal oppression. So go now. I am sending you to Pharaoh. Lead my chosen people out of Egypt." But Moses shrank back, questioning God. Who am I to face Pharaoh and rescue Israel from Egypt? The Creator replied, I will be with you, and this is your proof that I sent you when you lead them out. You will worship God on this very mountain. But Moses hesitated. If I go to the people of Israel and say, the God of your ancestors sent me, and they demand to know his name, what do I tell them? Then God spoke a mystery. I am who I am. And he commanded, tell them, the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Then God added, say this to the Hebrews, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my eternal name, the very identity, to be remembered for all generations. Go now, gather the elders of Israel, and declare to them that Yahweh, the God of your fathers, has appeared to me, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He says, I have watched over you and seen the hardships you suffer in Egypt. I will rescue you from your misery and lead you to the land of Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, a country flowing with rich milk and sweet honey. They will heed your warning. Then you must go with the elders to the ruler of Egypt and tell him, Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us go on a 3-day journey into the desert to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. But I know, the Lord warned, that Pharaoh will refuse to release you unless forced by power. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with terrifying miracles performed among them. Only then will he release you. I will make the Egyptians show you favor. When you finally leave, you will not go empty-handed. Every woman shall ask her neighbor and any guest in her home for silver, gold, and fine clothing. You will dress your sons and daughters, collecting the wealth of Egypt as you leave. Moses spoke into the mountain's blazing heat, still trembling beneath the shadow of holy fire. But what if they refuse to believe me? He asked. What if they say, the Lord did not show himself to you? His heavy doubts drowned out the burning bush. Then the Lord asked a simple question. What is that in your hand? Moses answered, a shepherd's staff. The Lord commanded, throw it down. He did, and the wood became a writhing serpent. Moses leaped back in terror. Then God said, reach out your hand and grab its tail. He reached out, and the snake hardened back into a staff. This, the Lord said, is so they will believe that the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob has appeared to you. Then came a second sign. Put your hand inside your coat. Moses tucked his hand inside, and when he pulled it out, his skin was diseased, white as snow. Now put it back inside, the Lord said. Moses did so, and when he withdrew, his skin was healthy again, smooth as a child's. If they reject the first miracle, God declared, they may believe the second. But if they still refuse to listen, what happens when you pour Nile water on dry dust, and it bleeds? Yet Moses, wrestling with his deep inner fears, whispered, Lord, I am no speaker, never have been, not in the past and not now, even now, after you have spoken directly to me. My speech is slow and my tongue is heavy with doubt. Yahweh replied, who made the human mouth? Who makes the mute, the deaf, the seeing, or the blind? Is it not I, Yahweh? Now move forward. I will fill your mouth and instruct you on exactly what to say. But Moses pulled back again. Lord, please send anyone else. At that, the anger of Yahweh flared hot against him. Yet even in his fury, mercy broke through. Is not Aaron the Levite your own brother? I know he speaks well. In fact, he is on his way to meet you, and when he sees you, his heart will leap with joy. Speak to him. Put the words in his mouth. I will guide your speech and his. He will speak to the crowd for you. He will act as your voice, and you will. Stand as Elohim to him, and hold this staff in your hand. With it, you will perform the miraculous signs. So Moses went back to his father-in-law Jethro and begged him, let me leave, please, and return to my people in Egypt to see if they are still alive. Jethro answered, "Go in peace." Then Yahweh spoke to Moses in Midian, "Go back to Egypt, because those who wanted you dead are all gone." So Moses took his wife and sons, placed them on a donkey, and set out on the way. Journey back, grasping the staff of Elohim. Yahweh then instructed him, "When you get back to Egypt, make absolutely sure you perform all the wonders I have placed in your hand before Pharaoh. But I'm going to harden his heart, and he will refuse to let the people go. Then tell him, this is what Yahweh says, Israel is my firstborn son. I command you, let my son go so he can worship me. But if you refuse to let him go watch, I will take your own firstborn son." Along the road at a desert camp, a terrifying messenger of Yahweh confronted Moses, seeking to take his life. But Zipporah, acting with instant clarity, grabbed a sharp stone knife and circumcised her son. She touched her husband's feet with the blood and cried out, "You are a bridegroom of blood to me." At that, Yahweh spared his life. Through this fierce act, the broken covenant was restored and sealed in blood. Zipporah had claimed a bond forged through raw obedience, a union of blood and belonging. Far away, Yahweh commanded Aaron, "Go out into the desert to find Moses." So he set out, and at the holy mountain of Elohim, he met his brother with a warm embrace. Moses shared all the heavy words of Yahweh and the wonders he was shown. Together they made their way back to Egypt. Upon arrival, they summoned all the elders of Israel. Aaron spoke every word Yahweh had given to Moses and displayed the miraculous signs before their eyes. The people believed. When they heard that Yahweh had seen them, had truly noticed their deep misery and pain, their spirits shifted. They bowed their heads in reverence, kneeling low to the ground. Armed with the burning fire and holy call, Moses and Aaron entered Pharaoh's grand palace. Facing the throne, under massive layers of gold and solid stone, they delivered a message from the one who speaks from flame. This is what Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel, says, they announced, "Let my people go, so they can hold a feast for me in the wild." Pharaoh did not flinch. He leaned in with freezing arrogance and scoffed, "Who is this Yahweh that I should listen and release Israel? I do not know your God, and I will not let them leave." His cold heart remained completely closed. Yet Moses and Aaron pushed on. "The Elohim of the Hebrews has called us. Please, allow us to take a 3-day journey into the desert to sacrifice to Yahweh our Elohim. Or he might strike us with disease or violence." Pharaoh stood up in anger. "Why, Moses and Aaron, do you distract the workers from their duties? Get back to your hard labor," he added. "Look, the common workers are already too many, and you want them to stop their heavy chores?" Right then, Pharaoh sent harsh orders to the slave drivers and supervisors of Israel. "Stop providing the people with straw to make bricks like before. Force them to search and gather straw for themselves. But demand the exact same brick quota from them. They are lazy." Lazy. That is why they cry out, "Let us go make sacrifices to our Elohim." Let the work weigh heavier on their shoulders, forcing them to labor instead of listening to empty lies. So the slave drivers went out and declared to the people, "Pharaoh says, 'This I will not give you straw. Go hunt for it wherever you can, but your daily target remains unchanged.'" And the people dispersed across the Egyptian lands, searching through empty fields for scraps to use instead of straw. The cruel drivers pushed them hard, demanding, "Hit your target every single day, just like before," when straw was handed to you. The Hebrew foremen appointed by Pharaoh's brutal taskmasters were flogged. "Why," the guards demanded, "did you fail to hit your target for bricks both yesterday and today?" Broken and desperate, the Hebrew leaders went to Pharaoh's court crying out, "Why do you treat your servants this way? We get no straw, yet they command us to produce bricks. Now we are beaten, but the fault lies with your own men." But Pharaoh snapped back, "You are lazy, just lazy. That is why you plead, 'Let us go offer sacrifices to Yahweh.' Get back to work. No straw will be provided, yet you must produce the exact same amount of bricks. The Hebrew foremen knew they were in grave danger. Leaving the palace gates, they ran into Moses and Aaron waiting outside. Their words cut deep with betrayal. May Yahweh watch over you and judge, because you made us hated by Pharaoh and his court. You have practically handed them a sword to slaughter us. Deeply shaken and crushed, Moses turned back to Yahweh weeping. "O Lord, why have you inflicted such pain on these people? Why did you even send me? Ever since I stood before Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has only brought ruin. And you have not saved them at all." Yahweh answered Moses, responding to the cry he had brought in deep anguish. His voice did not falter. His promise stood firm. "Now you will witness what I will do to Pharaoh. With a powerful hand, he will let them go. Yes, driven by force, he will expel them from his land." Then God spoke further to Moses, saying, "I am Yahweh. I revealed myself to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, God Almighty. But by my sacred name, Yahweh, I did not make myself fully known to them. I also swore my covenant with them, promising to give them Canaan, the very land where they lived as foreigners. Now I have heard the agonizing cries of Israel, whom Egypt has so brutally enslaved, and I have remembered my eternal promise. Therefore declare this to the children of Israel: I am Yahweh. I will lift the heavy burdens of Egypt from your shoulders and rescue you from slavery. I will redeem you with power, with an outstretched arm and mighty acts of judgment. I will claim you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am Yahweh your God, who rescues you from under the crushing weight of Egypt. And I will lead you to the land I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will hand it to you as your own inheritance. I am Yahweh." So Moses carried this message to the children of Israel, but they refused to listen to him. Their spirits were broken. The heavy chains of bondage lay like stone on their hearts, leaving them unable to find any hope. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses once more, saying, "Go speak to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, demanding he let the Israelites leave his land." But Moses answered, "Look, even my own people refuse to hear me. Why would Pharaoh ever listen to me when I speak with faltering lips?" Yet Yahweh did not relent. He gave Moses and Aaron firm charges regarding the children of Israel and Pharaoh, ruler of Egypt. They were ordered to lead the captives out of their deep misery. And the word of Yahweh marched onward through human history. A sacred lineage was recorded, traced like a golden thread through generations of divine promise. These were the leaders of their ancestral houses, Reuben's sons, the firstborn of Israel: Enoch, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. Families. What secrets lie in Reuben's line, and Simeon's sons: Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Saul. Born to a Canaanite mother. Then the bloodline of Levi across generations: Gershon and Kohath and Merari. Levi lived 137 years. Gershon's branch brought Libni and Shammai, each leading their own families. From Kohath rose Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. Kohath lived 133 years. From Merari came Mali and Mushi, the sacred clans of the Levites mapped across their generations. Amram took his aunt Jochebed, and she bore him Aaron, Moses, and their sister Miriam. Amram lived 137 years. The sons of Izhar were Korah, Nepheg, and Zikri. From Uzziel came Mishael, Elzaphan, and Sithri. Aaron took Elisheba, daughter of Aminadab and sister of Nahshon, as his wife. She bore him Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. Korah's sons were Asir, Elkanah, and Abiasaph. These were the ancient clans of the Korahites. Eleazar, Aaron's son, married a daughter of Putiel as his wife, and she bore him Phinehas. These were the patriarchs of the Levite families, divided by their ancestral houses. It was this Aaron and Moses whom Yahweh commanded, lead the children of Israel out from the land of Egypt in their vast divisions. These very men stood before Pharaoh, ruler of Egypt, speaking in the name of Yahweh to deliver his people. This was Moses and Aaron. On that fateful day when Yahweh spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, he declared again, "I am Yahweh. Speak to Pharaoh everything I tell you." But Moses, filled with doubt, replied, "Behold, I speak with faltering lips. Why would Pharaoh ever listen to me?" Yahweh answered Moses, "See, I have made you as an Elohim to Pharaoh, and Aaron your brother shall be your prophet. You will speak all that I command, and Aaron will tell Pharaoh to let the children of Israel leave his land. But I will harden Pharaoh's stubborn heart and multiply my signs and wonders across the land of Egypt. Though Pharaoh will refuse to listen, I will stretch out my hand to deliver my people Israel's children out of Egypt with great acts of judgment. Egypt will surely know that I am Yahweh when I stretch my hand over them and deliver my people from their very midst." So Moses and Aaron did exactly as Yahweh commanded. Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron 83 when they faced the mighty Pharaoh. Yahweh then instructed them, "When Pharaoh demands, perform a miracle to prove yourselves. Tell Aaron, cast down your staff before Pharaoh. It will transform into a serpent." Moses and Aaron entered the court of Pharaoh acting precisely as Yahweh instructed. Aaron cast his staff before the king and his court, and it became a living serpent. But Pharaoh summoned his wise magicians and sorcerers, Egypt's sacred scribes, and by their secret occult arts, they did the same. Every man threw down his staff, yielding serpents, yet Aaron's staff swallowed theirs one by one. Still Pharaoh's heart hardened. He would not listen exactly as Yahweh had foretold. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses once more. "Pharaoh's heart is heavy and stubborn. He refuses to release the people. Rise early in the morning and wait by the riverbank, for Pharaoh goes down to the water. Hold in your hand the staff that transformed into a serpent and speak to him. Yahweh Elohim of the Hebrews has sent me to you, saying, 'Let my people go, that they may worship me in the wilderness.' But until now you have refused to listen. Thus says Yahweh, by this you will know that I am Yahweh. Watch, I will strike the waters of the Nile with the staff in my hand, and they shall turn into blood. The fish will die, the river will stink, and the Egyptians will loathe to drink its waters." Then Yahweh instructed Moses, "Tell Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their canals, streams, and ponds, and pools of water turning into blood. Blood will fill the entire land, exposing the hidden rivers of our souls, of Egypt, pooling even in their stone vessels." The two brothers did exactly as Yahweh commanded. Aaron raised his staff, striking the great Nile right before Pharaoh and his court. Suddenly, every drop of the river transformed into thick blood. The fish perished. A foul, rotting stench choked the air, making the water completely undrinkable. Crimson stains filled the entire land, yet the royal magicians matched this through their own occult secrets. Pharaoh's heart hardened. He refused to hear the brothers exactly as Yahweh had warned. He simply turned and retreated into his palace, shutting his soul to the terror outside. Desperate, the locals dug deep wells near the riverbank, searching for clean water to drink because they could not swallow the ruined Nile. 7 long days passed under this heavy divine judgment. Then Yahweh directed Moses to confront the king again with a clear demand. "Set my captives free so they can worship me. If you refuse to let them go, your entire kingdom will swarm with frogs." The threat was absolute. Yahweh promised the Nile would crawl with countless creatures. They would infest your private chambers, your beds, your cooking ovens, and your bread bowls. They will climb all over your body, your subjects, and your advisors. Moses then commanded Aaron to extend his wooden staff over every canal and pool of water. He obeyed, and the sacred rivers began to churn. Great waves of frogs crawled from the deep, blanketing the soil. They filled every corner, invading every single breath. The nation suffocated under this plague, but the court sorcerers matched this feat, bringing forth even more frogs. However, had no power to banish them. Shaken by this endless nightmare, the king called for the Hebrew leaders. "Pray to your God," he begged, "to remove these creatures from my kingdom. Do this, and I will release your tribe to offer their sacrifices." Moses answered, "Name the exact hour you want me to intercede, so these pests might vanish from your homes and stay only in the Nile." The king replied, "Tomorrow." Moses said, "It shall be done," proving that no power compares to our Creator. The infestation will clear out from your palace your servants and your subjects, retreating back into the river. Leaving the palace, Moses pleaded with the Almighty, and the Creator answered his desperate prayer. Every single frog died inside the homes, the courtyards, and the fields piled into massive mounds. A terrible stench filled the air. Yet the moment the king saw the danger had passed, his pride returned. He closed his ears to them exactly as the divine voice predicted. Then the Lord instructed Moses to have Aaron strike the soil with his staff, turning the dry dust of Egypt into swarming gnats. When he struck the earth, a dark cloud rose as the ground itself began to crawl, covering people and animals alike. Every speck of dirt was now a biting misery. The court sorcerers desperately tried to copy this miracle using their secret spells, but they failed. The raw power was beyond them. In fear, they warned the king, saying, "This is the hand of God." Yet Pharaoh's stubborn heart hardened further, and he ignored their warning. Then the Creator spoke to Moses again. "Rise early to confront the king by the riverbank. Tell him that the Lord demands the release of his chosen people. If you refuse, a terrible swarm of wild insects will invade your court, ruining your cities and infesting your homes. The very soil beneath you will crawl with them, but I will protect the territory of Goshen where my children live. No swarms will enter there, proving that I rule over this entire earth. A clear boundary will separate my chosen ones from your subjects. This miracle occurs tomorrow." True to his word, the Lord sent massive clouds of flies into Egypt, choking the royal palace and overwhelming his advisors. They flooded every home, leaving the entire country completely devastated by their presence. Pharaoh summoned the brothers back. "Go," he relented, "and offer your sacrifice." Pharaoh says worship inside the land. But Moses refuses the compromise. He knows some chains must be completely broken. To offer our true devotion will always offend our old, comfortable lifestyle. If we dare to burn our idols right in front of them, will we not be destroyed? No, we must journey deep into the quiet wilderness as our deepest calling demands. The ego wavers, offering a false compromise. "I will let you go to worship in the wild. Just do not go too deep." "Now, pray for my relief," Moses answered. "I will petition the Lord, and these swarming pests will leave you by tomorrow. But do not lie to your own soul again, refusing to let us find freedom." Leaving the ruler, Moses prayed, and the dark plague was lifted from the tyrant. From his entire house, not a single fly remained. Yet when the pain stopped, the ego hardened again, refusing to surrender its control. Then the Lord commanded Moses, "Confront the king again and say, 'This is the word of the God of the oppressed. Let my people go to serve me. If you stubbornly refuse and keep them enslaved, a heavy hand will strike everything you rely on for survival. Your horses in the fields, the donkeys, the camels, and all your massive herds with a devastating terminal plague. But the divine draws a line: what belongs to the children of Israel will remain completely untouched. The moment is set. Tomorrow the divine will do this thing in the land." And it happened. The source of Egypt's material wealth crumbled, yet not a single beast belonging to Israel was lost. The king sent investigators to check and found their flocks completely whole. Still, the tyrant's rigid mind refused to yield, clinging to his crumbling illusion of control. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, "Gather handfuls of dark ash from the furnace and toss it toward the sky right before the king. It will scatter like a toxic mist over the country, turning into painful boils, erupting in open wounds on everyone." So they gathered the soot and stood before the throne. Moses flung the black dust upward, and agonizing blistered wounds broke out on both people and animals. Even the royal sorcerers fell crippled by the burning pain, their magical defenses shattered. Yet the tyrant remained stubborn as ever, blind to his own self-destruction. Then the divine voice urged, "Rise early tomorrow morning and face him, and confront the king with this message. Thus says the God of the oppressed, release my people so they can serve their purpose. This time my plagues will strike the very center of your heart, breaking your house and your entire nation until you realize that your fragile ego is not supreme in this universe. I could have easily wiped you out in an instant, leaving your empire in ruins, erasing your name from the earth. But you were spared for a deeper purpose, to witness, a power greater than your own so the world may wake up. Yet you still resist, blocking the soul's path to true freedom. Listen at this exact hour tomorrow. I will unleash a devastating storm of ice far worse than anything this nation has ever witnessed since its birth. So quickly gather your herds and pull everything you value out of harm's way. Any person or beast left out in the open who fails to find shelter will perish under the weight of the storm." Hearing this, some of his court trembled and rushed to bring their households and herds indoors. But those who remained blind ignored the warnings of the Spirit, leaving their workers and beasts completely unprotected in the open fields. Then the divine command came. Raise your hand toward the open sky to bring the freezing storm down upon the whole country, striking both man and beast alike. Moses lifted his staff toward the heavens. Suddenly, deafening thunder and ice crashed down, while lightning struck the ground. A terrifying mixture of ice and burning fire fell. From the black skies, a catastrophic storm unlike anything the ancient land had ever suffered. What if the storm was a mirror? Frozen ruin crushed everything in the fields, man, beast, and crop, shattering every branch. Yet in Goshen, where the faithful found sanctuary, a strange silence reigned. Not one stone fell. Terrified, the tyrant summoned the prophets, offering a desperate confession. This time I have failed. I sinned. Your God is just. My people and I are guilty. Beg him to stop this, because there has been far too much terrifying thunder and ice. I will release you. You are free to leave now. Moses answered, the moment I step outside these city walls, I will stretch my hands toward the heavens. The roaring will stop. The ice will vanish. Then you will finally realize that this entire world belongs to you, the Creator. But I know you and your court. Deep down, you still do not truly revere God. The flax and barley crops lay ruined. The barley was already heading out, and the flax was budding. Fortunately, the wheat and spelt survived, spared because they ripened much later in the season. Leaving the palace and the city behind, Moses stood under the open sky and raised his hands in prayer, and suddenly the crashing storm died. The downpour stopped, leaving a heavy silence over the earth. But once the sky cleared and the danger passed, the king slipped right back into his old ways, locking his heart away. His court did the same, cold and entirely unyielding, refusing to set the captives free. It happened exactly as God had warned through his prophet. Then the Creator told Moses, "Go back to him. I have let his stubborn pride consume his soul and the souls of his advisors, so that my awesome power can be revealed right before their eyes. And so you can pass down this story to your children and grandchildren, telling of the wonders done here and the incredible miracles that broke their pride. So you will all know that I am the Lord." So the two brothers stood before the throne once more. This is the message from the Hebrew God. How long will you refuse to bend your knee? Let my people go to worship me. Because if you stubbornly say no, Tomorrow I will unleash a plague of locusts across your borders. They will blanket the earth so heavily you won't even see the soil. They will strip away whatever little food survived the devastating hail, eating every single leaf. They will swarm into your palace, the homes of your noblemen, and every dwelling in Egypt. Your ancestors have never witnessed anything like this since the dawn of your history. With that final warning, Moses turned around and walked out. The king's own advisors begged him, "How long will this man destroy us? Just let them go so they can worship their God. Can't you see that our nation is already completely ruined?" So they dragged the prophets back inside. Pharaoh relented slightly, saying, "Go worship your God, but tell me who exactly is leaving." Moses answered, "Every one of us, our young, our old, our sons and daughters, and all our livestock. We must hold a sacred festival for our Creator." The king scoffed. "Your God will surely need to help you if I ever let your children leave. Obviously, you are plotting something dark. I refuse. Only the grown men may go worship, since that is what you wanted." And they were immediately thrown out of his sight. Then the Lord commanded Moses, "Raise your hand over this land and call the locusts to swarm and devour every single plant left standing after the terrible hail." Moses raised his staff, and a howling east wind began to sweep across the country, blowing all night. By sunrise, the wind brought a living plague. Dark swarms blanketed every inch of Egypt, settling in suffocating, writhing layers. Never before had this land witnessed such an overwhelming scourge, and nothing like it would ever happen again. They choked out the light, turning day to night. They consumed every scrap spared by the ice, every leaf, every tiny blade of grass. A gray wasteland remained. Desperate, the king sent for the prophets and cried, "I have deeply sinned against your Lord and against you. Please pardon my arrogance just this once, and beg him to lift this suffocating death from me." Moses stepped out and prayed. In response, the gale shifted, transforming into a powerful western wind, sweeping every last locust into the sea of reeds, leaving Egypt clean, but still dark within. But the tyrant's heart remained unyielding, stubbornly refusing to let the children of Israel break free. Then the divine voice commanded Moses, "Stretch your hand out toward the heavens to summon a darkness over Egypt, a heavy, suffocating gloom that you can actually feel." And Moses did. A terrifying blackness swallowed the land for 3 days. No one could see, and no one dared to rise from their spot. Yet the children of Israel had light shining in their homes. Pharaoh summoned Moses, saying, "Go and worship your Lord, but leave your flocks and herds behind. Even your children can go." But Moses replied, "You must also let us bring sacrifices and offerings so we can worship the Lord our God. Our animals must come with us. Not a single hoof stays behind. We do not know what we must offer to the Lord until we get there." But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart again, and he refused to let them go. Pharaoh snarled at Moses, "Get out of my sight. Never dare to show your face here again. The next time you look at me, you die." Moses quietly replied, "You are right. I will never look upon your face again." The Lord told Moses, "I will bring one final disaster upon Pharaoh and Egypt. After that, he will set you free. When he finally lets you go, he won't just ask you to leave, will banish you completely." Then the Lord instructed Moses, "Go and speak directly to the people. Tell every man to ask his Egyptian neighbor, and every woman her neighbor for silver and gold." The Lord made the Egyptians respect them, and they did exactly as told. By now the prophet Moses had become highly revered across all of Egypt, respected by Pharaoh's own court and by the common people alike. Moses warned Pharaoh, "This is what the Lord says. Around midnight I will sweep through Egypt. Every firstborn son in this land will die from the heir of Pharaoh on the throne, to the oldest son of the lowest servant girl, and even the firstborn of the livestock. A terrible wailing will rise up across Egypt, a scream like nothing ever heard before, and nothing that will ever be heard again." but for Israel. Not even a dog will bark at man or beast, showing that the Lord separates Egypt from his people. Then all your high officials will come and bow down before me, begging us leave you and all who follow you. Only then will I depart. Shaking with anger, Moses turned and stormed away from Pharaoh. The Lord had told Moses, Pharaoh will not listen to you, so that my wonders can be multiplied across the land of Egypt. Moses and Aaron performed all these miracles before Pharaoh, but the Lord kept Pharaoh's heart stubborn. He still would not let the Israelites leave his country. Now in Egypt, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, declaring a fresh start. This month will be the first month of the year for you. He then commanded them to tell the entire community of Israel on the 10th day of this month. Every family must choose a perfect 1-year-old male lamb or young goat. If a family is too small to eat a whole lamb, they should share with a neighbor, dividing the meat based on what each person can eat. Keep that lamb until the 14th day of the month, when the whole community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. Take some of the blood and smear it on the sides and tops of the doorframes of each home where they eat the meal. That very night, roast the meat over a fire. Never boil it or eat it raw, and eat it with flatbread and bitter herbs. Absolutely nothing must be left over until morning. Burn any remains. Eat it in a hurry with your shoes on and belts tight. What are we running from? With sandals strapped and staffs in hand, they awaited the divine Passover that night. Yahweh himself would march through Egypt, striking every firstborn, both man and beast, and executing judgment on all the gods of Egypt. Yet where blood painted the doorposts, Yahweh would pass, over protecting those chosen households. This fateful day, Yahweh declared, shall remain a solemn memorial for you, a feast to keep through all generations, a timeless decree. For 7 days they must eat unleavened bread, purging all yeast from their households. Anyone who ate leavened bread during this week would be completely severed from the community of Israel, whether native or immigrant. The 1st and 7th days required holy gatherings, days of rest except for preparing food. Yahweh commanded that this memorial be observed every single year, because on this day he led his nation out of Egypt. From the evening of the 14th day until the evening of the 21st, they must eat only unleavened bread. Moses summoned the elders of Israel and delivered these urgent instructions. Select your lamb sacrifice, the Passover, and smear the blood on your doorframes using a branch of hyssop. Nobody must step outside until dawn, when Yahweh passes through the land to strike. He will recognize the blood and bar the destroyer from entering your homes. Keep this practice as a permanent law for you and your children forever. In the future, when your children ask, "What does this ceremony mean to you?" answer them, "It is the Passover sacrifice for Yahweh, who bypassed the homes of the children of Israel in Egypt, striking down our captors, but sparing our lives." The people bowed in reverence, executing the sacred ritual. At midnight, the ultimate strike fell upon the firstborn of Egypt. In Egypt, from the crown prince on the throne to the prisoner in the deepest dungeon, and even the firstborn of the cattle. A terrible wail echoed across Egypt, a scream so piercing it had never been heard before, because not a single home escaped the shadow of death. During the night, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron. "Get out," he begged. "Leave my people, both you and the Israelites. Go worship Yahweh just as you demanded. Take your sheep and cattle, just go and bless me too." The terrified Egyptians begged the Hebrews to flee, fearing their own complete destruction. The Israelites fled in absolute haste, carrying their unrisen dough in their heavy kneading bowls, wrapped in cloth over their shoulders. They followed Moses' instructions, asking for silver, gold, and clothing from their neighbors who obliged. Thus Yahweh turned the hearts of the Egyptians to grant them favor, and they plundered Egypt. Around 600,000 men, with women, children, and a diverse crowd, journeyed from Ramses to Succoth. They brought their massive flocks and herds, baking flatbread from the unrisen dough they carried. There was no time to let it rise, having been driven out of Egypt with absolutely no warning. The descendants of Israel had lived in Egypt for exactly 430 years. On that precise day, Yahweh led their massive hosts out of bondage. This night of vigil, dedicated to Yahweh for their rescue, was a sacred vigil to be remembered and observed by every generation of Israel. Yahweh also established rules for this feast. No foreigner could eat the Passover unless a purchased servant had been circumcised. Temporary residents and hired hands were forbidden from joining. The entire meal had to be consumed inside a single house with none of its bones broken. All the assembly of Israel must celebrate it. If a stranger living among you wished to participate, his household had to be circumcised, making them equal to native-born citizens. One law applied to all. So the Israelites obeyed every command Yahweh gave to Moses and Aaron. And on that momentous day, Yahweh finally led them out of their own inner Egypt, no longer enslaved by fear, but reborn and protected by the marking blood. Yahweh then commanded Moses, "Consecrate to me every firstborn soul." Why claim the firstborn? Every male opening the womb in Israel, man or beast, is mine. This decree began a deeper consecration of Israel's identity, an inner awakening anchored in memory and devotion. Moses turned to the restless crowd and spoke, "Remember this moment, the day you fled Egypt, escaping the prison of your chains. Because, with a relentless hand, Yahweh rescued you from exile. Let no leavened bread be eaten." In the spring month of Abib, on this exact day, their long march to freedom began. Moses spoke on revealing the destiny promised to those who came before them. When Yahweh leads you into the territory of the Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite, a rich land flowing with milk and honey, you must keep this ritual every year. Eat unleavened bread for 7 days, and on the 7th day, hold a sacred festival to Yahweh. Let no leaven be found anywhere in your vast borders. He told them to pass down this truth, saying, "When that day comes, tell your child, this is because of what Yahweh did for me when he saved me from Egypt. These actions will be a mark on your hand and a shield between your eyes. So the law of Yahweh stays always on your tongue. For with a shattering hand, Yahweh rescued you. You must keep this sacred rite every year at its set time." Moses added that once Yahweh had brought them into the country of the Canaanite, they had to surrender every firstborn male, both human and animal, to Yahweh. Every firstborn of a donkey must be ransomed with a lamb. If you do not ransom it, break its neck. And every firstborn son must be redeemed. When your child asks you later what this all means, tell him with a powerful hand, Yahweh pulled us out of Egypt, escaping from the prison of slavery. When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to release us, Yahweh destroyed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both human and beast. That is why I sacrifice every firstborn, male to Yahweh, but ransom my sons. This ritual will act like a seal upon your hand and a reminder on your forehead, a witness that Yahweh set us free by his power. When Pharaoh finally let the exiles go, Elohim did not take them down the easiest road, even though it went through Philistine territory and was shorter. For Elohim knew that if they faced battle too quickly, fear would break them, and they would run back to Egypt. So he led them along the desert path toward the Sea of Reeds. They marched out armed, prepared but protected from sudden war. As they journeyed, Moses carried with him the bones of Joseph, honoring the promise Joseph made the tribes of Israel swear Elohim will surely remember you, and you must carry my bones out of this land. Leaving Ramesses, they traveled to Succoth, then pitched their tents at Etham, right at the desert's edge, and Yahweh walked ahead of them. By day he led as a thick pillar of cloud. By night, he became a pillar of fire, giving light so they could journey without stopping. Neither the thick cloud by day nor the blazing fire by night ever vanished from their sight. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, commanding him to double back and pitch camp right near Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea facing Baal Zephon. This trap of a place was intentional. Yahweh knew Pharaoh would believe they were wandering lost, cornered by the brutal desert. And he would harden Pharaoh's resolve one final time. He would chase them, But in this final clash, Yahweh would show his glory, forcing Egypt to realize he is Yahweh. So they camped by the water. But when word reached Pharaoh that his slaves had escaped, his mind and the minds of his court changed instantly. They cried out, "What have we done? We let our slaves go free." Pharaoh quickly readied his war chariot, gathered his elite army, 600 of his best chariots, and every war carriage in Egypt, and gave chase. The Israelites marched out with bold hearts. But when they turned, they saw the Egyptian army, their past, closing in. Terror gripped them, and they cried to Yahweh, their panic turning into bitter resentment against their leader, Moses. "Were there no graves in Egypt?" they demanded, "that you dragged us out here to die in this wasteland? Didn't we plead to be left alone to serve our masters? It would have been far better to endure slavery than perish here." Yet Moses stood firm, telling them, "Do not fear. Stand ground and watch the deliverance Yahweh will work today. For the fearsome Egyptians you see now you will never see again. Yahweh will fight, while you remain silent." Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, "Why cry to me? Command the people to move forward, and you raise your staff, stretch your hand out over the sea and split it. The Israelites must cross right through on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of Egypt to chase you into the abyss. And through this I will display my glory over Pharaoh, over his war chariots and his cavalry. Then they will know I am Yahweh." Then the angel of Elohim guarding the camp of Israel moved behind them. The pillar of cloud shifted to stand between the two armies. Darkness fell upon the Egyptians, while light illuminated the beach. Night for the Israelites. Throughout those hours, neither camp dared approach the other. Moses stretched his hand over the waters, and Yahweh drove back the sea with a fierce east wind blowing all night. The sea split wide, revealing dry ground. The currents rose like towering walls on their right and left as Israel crossed through the heart of the sea. Then Pharaoh's army charged in after them, every horse chariot and horseman. Just before dawn, Yahweh looked down through the fire and cloud, throwing the Egyptian army into utter confusion. He jammed their chariot wheels, making them drag heavily through the seabed. Realizing they fought against the hand of the living God, the Egyptians screamed, "Let us flee from Israel! Yahweh is fighting for them against us." Then Yahweh told Moses, "Stretch your hand over the sea so the waters collapse upon the Egyptians." Moses obeyed. As the sun rose, the sea surged back to its natural depth. The Egyptians tried to escape, but Yahweh swept them away in the tide. Not a single soldier of Pharaoh survived. But the Israelites walked through the sea, on dry ground, water standing like walls on both sides. That day, Yahweh delivered Israel from the hand of Egypt. When they saw the dead lining the shore, they understood the mighty power of Yahweh. A deep awe fell, and they believed in him and in Moses, his servant. In the quiet aftermath of their miraculous escape, Moses and the people raised their voices in a dramatic song to Yahweh. Their hearts overflowed with praise as they sang, "I will sing to Yahweh, highly exalted. He cast horse and rider into the sea." Their song was no cheap victory tune, but a profound truth. Yah is my strength and song. He has become my salvation. This is my God. I will praise him. My father's Elohim, I will lift him high. Yahweh, they declared, is a warrior. This is his very name. Pharaoh's chariots were hurled into the sea. His elite officers sank like stones in the sea of reeds. The dark abyss swallowed them. The waves, blasted by Yahweh's breath, rose like walls, and the enemy drowned in the ocean depths. His right hand, glorious in power, shattered the foe. They recalled how the enemy boasted, "I will chase, I will conquer, I will seize the spoil." But Yahweh sent a mere breath, and the waters blanketed them. They sank like lead in the mighty depths. Then rose the question, rising like incense from redeemed lips. Who is like you, Yahweh, among the mighty? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, performing wonders? He stretched out his hand, and the earth swallowed the foe. In his relentless love, he guided. Why do we fear freedom more than captivity? God would guide his rescued souls home, and the world would hear of this and tremble. Panic would paralyze our ancient enemies, confuse the rulers of Edom, and seize the leaders of Moab, with dread melting the very hearts of Canaan. An existential terror would fall heavily upon them like a suffocating silence, until his chosen ones passed by the souls he redeemed with his own hand. They sang of their destiny too, how God would plant them on the mountain of his own presence in the sacred sanctuary he built. He would reign forever. But inside them, like an echo of the drowning sea, the old terror returned. The memory of Pharaoh's pursuing horses and war chariots entering the depths before God crashed the heavy ocean over them. Yet his people miraculously walked through on dry ground. Then Miriam, the prophetess, sister of Aaron, stood up, tambourine in hand, leading the women in a wild, desperate dance. She sang the ancient echo, "Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has cast into the sea." But praise quickly withered into bone-deep weariness. Moses led the people away from the Sea of Reeds, straight into the silent wilderness of Shur. For 3 days they wandered the empty desert, finding no water. Arriving at a place called Marah, they finally saw water, but it was bitter, completely undrinkable. That is, why they named it Marah, meaning bitterness. Soon their internal poison turned against Moses, demanding, "What shall we drink?" Moses cried out to the Lord, who pointed him toward a tree. Moses threw it into toxic waters, and the spring became sweet. In that quiet moment, God did more than just feed them physically. He tested their inner minds. Right there, he laid down a solemn decree saying, "If you truly listen to the voice of the Lord your God, doing what is right in his eyes, if you heed his commands and keep all his decrees, I will never bring upon you the painful plagues I brought upon Egypt, for I am the Lord your healer." Eventually, they reached Elim. There, amid the desolate dryness of the wasteland, they found rest 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. They camped beside those refreshing waters. Moving on from the oasis of Elim, the entire community of Israel traveled deeper into the wilderness of Sin, which stretched between Elim and Sinai. It was now the 15th day of the second month since they had walked out of Egypt. But the gratitude of freedom vanished into existential panic, and hunger stirred rebellion. The cold whispers grew louder against their leaders. "If only we had died by God's own hand back in Egypt where we sat by the meat pots and ate bread until we were full. Instead, you dragged us into this void to starve, this whole community to death." Yet God responded not with anger, but with mercy. He told Moses, "See, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people must go out daily and gather, enough for just that day. This will test if they will walk in my ways or not. On the 6th day, they must prepare double the amount." Moses and Aaron then confronted the anxious crowd. "This evening, you will realize it was the Lord who rescued you from Egypt. And tomorrow, you will behold his glory, because he has heard your quiet complaints. Who are we? Your bitter cries are not against us, but against the Lord himself." As Aaron addressed the silent crowd, they turned toward the vast desert, and suddenly the blinding glory of the Lord appeared within the cloud. Then God spoke to Moses, saying, "I have heard the bitter whispers of Israel. Tell them this: at twilight you will feast on meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know I am the Lord your God." That very night, quail flew in and covered the camp. By morning, as the heavy dew evaporated, a delicate, flake-like substance lay scattered across the desert floor as fine as frost upon the dry ground. Bewildered, the people whispered to one another, "What is it?" For they had no idea. Moses answered, "This is the bread the Lord has provided for you." Then he commanded, "Gather it up exactly as much as you need, 1 basket per person for everyone in your household." The people obeyed, collecting the food, some gathering a lot, others very little. But when they measured it out, everyone had exactly enough. Like them, we only find peace when we gather what we needed. Moses warned them not to hoard this gift overnight. Yet, driven by fear, some refused to listen, and their anxiety rotted, breeding worms and stench. Angry at their mistrust, Moses watched them gather daily, only what they needed before the heat dissolved it. On the 6th day, they gathered double, 2 omers for each soul. Confused, the elders reported this to Moses, who explained, "Yahweh has declared tomorrow a sacred pause, a holy Sabbath to the Creator. Bake and boil what you need today. Save the rest, store it in faith, until morning." They did, and miraculously, it did not rot. Moses told them to trust. "Eat it now, for today is Yahweh's Sabbath. The fields are empty. 6 days you must search, but on the 7th there was only silence." Still, when that 7th day came, some still searched, finding only emptiness. Yahweh asked Moses, "How long will they refuse my path? Yahweh has given you this rest. That is why on the 6th day he provides double. Let every person sit in stillness, remaining in their place on the 7th day." Finally, they rested. They called this food manna, meaning, "What is it?" It was like white seeds, sweet as wafers of wild honey. Then Moses gave a command, "Preserve a single portion of this mystery for the future, so your children can see. The bread that sustained you in the barren lands when I rescued you from the chains of Egypt." Moses ordered Aaron to seal a jar of this manna and place it before Yahweh, keeping it forever. Aaron placed it before the covenant, just as Yahweh commanded Moses. They ate this bread of transition for 40 years, until they reached their permanent home at the borders of Canaan. But the restless journey of Israel was far from over. They moved deeper into the waste of sin, following the divine path, camping at last at Rephidim. But the wells were dry. In the silence of the desert, thirst turned to fury. They confronted Moses, demanding water. Moses looked at their panic, asking, "Why do you blame me? Why test Yahweh?" But their primal fear only grew more intense. They cried, "Why did you lead us out of Egypt? To kill us and our children?" With this heat, broken Moses cried out to Yahweh, "What must I do with these people? They are ready to stone me." Yahweh spoke with absolute calm, step out ahead of them, bringing the elders of Israel. "Take the same wooden staff that struck the Nile and walk. I will be waiting for you there, standing on the rock at Horeb. Strike it, and water will flow so they may drink." Moses obeyed. Right before the eyes of the elders, he struck the stone and water gushed out. The place was named Massa, meaning the place of testing and quarreling, reflecting the deep crisis of trust in their hearts. They asked, "Is Yahweh actually here?" But their peace was shattered by a new threat. The fierce warriors of Amalek launched a sudden attack at Rephidim. Moses called Joshua, "Choose our warriors. Tomorrow I will stand on the high hill, holding the staff of God." Joshua obeyed, leading his men directly into the brutal conflict, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur climbed the peak. Whenever Moses raised his arms to heaven, Israel won. But when his strength failed and his arms dropped, Amalek pushed back. When his limbs became heavy, they rolled a stone for him. Aaron and Hur stood close beside him, holding up his arms, keeping them steady and unwavering, until the sun finally went down. Joshua broke the enemy lines. This story of struggle reflects our own internal battles. Then Yahweh said, "Write this struggle in a book and read it aloud to Joshua. I will completely erase the shadow of Amalek from history." To mark this, Moses built an altar calling it, "Yahweh is my banner." He said, "A hand is raised against the throne of God." The battle with our deepest fears continues through the ages. Jethro, priest of Midian and Moses' father-in-law, heard whispers of the miracles God worked for Moses and for Israel, how Yahweh shattered their chains and pulled them from Egypt. Deeply moved, Jethro took Zipporah, Moses' wife, whom the prophet had sent away for safety along with her 2 young sons. The first was Gershom, because Moses once declared, "I am a stranger in a foreign land." The other was Eleazar, because he said, "The God of my father was my shield, saving me from the sharp sword of Pharaoh." Jethro sought Moses in the barren wilderness where the tribes camped under the shadow of the mountain of the divine. He sent a message ahead saying, "Look, your father-in-law Jethro is coming to meet you, bringing your wife and both her sons." Moses stepped out to welcome him, bowed low and kissed him, and after exchanging greetings and asking about each other's well-being, they stepped inside the tent. Inside, Moses revealed all the wonders Yahweh unleashed against Pharaoh and Egypt to rescue Israel, the brutal struggles they endured along the road, and how Yahweh carried them through it all. Jethro's heart lifted at the profound mercy Yahweh showed to Israel. He praised him, saying, "Praise be to Yahweh, who snatched you from the grip of Egypt and the power of Pharaoh, who liberated these people from the heavy hand of oppression. Now I know that Yahweh towers far above all other gods, for he crushed them in their blinding pride." Deeply moved, Jethro offered sacrifices and burnt offerings to God. Aaron and the elders of Israel gathered, and together they shared a sacred meal before the face of the Almighty. The very next morning, Jethro watched Moses at work. From dawn until dusk, Moses sat to judge the people while they stood waiting for their turn. Witnessing this, Jethro asked, "What is this endless task you are doing? Why do you sit here completely alone, while all these people crowd around you from dawn to dusk?" Moses answered, "Because they come to me seeking the counsel of God. When a conflict breaks out, I decide between a man and his neighbor, teaching them the sacred decrees and laws of the Almighty himself." But Jethro shook his head. "What you are doing is not wise," he said plainly. "You will surely exhaust yourself and all these people with you. This heavy burden is too much. You cannot carry it alone. Hear me now. Let me offer you counsel, and may God guide you. Stand as the people's voice before God, bringing their troubles directly to Him. Teach them the sacred rules. Show them how to live and the work they must carry out." Jethro added, "But you must also search the crowds for capable men who truly fear God, who are honest and despise dirty money. Appoint them as leaders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Let them serve as judges for the people. Let them settle the minor issues themselves, but bring the heavy cases to you. This will ease your heavy burden, because they will carry it with you. If you do this, and God approves, you will survive the strain, and all these people will finally return home in peace." Moses listened to his father-in-law's voice and followed his wisdom. He searched out capable leaders from Israel and put them in charge of the people as captains of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. They served as judges day in and day out, bringing only the hardest cases to Moses while settling the minor things themselves. Once this structure was secure, Moses bid his father-in-law farewell. Jethro journeyed back to his homeland, leaving behind a nation empowered not just by their sudden escape, but by deep wisdom and order. 3 months after, the sons of Israel fled from Egypt. On that exact day, they entered the vast desert of Sinai. Leaving Rephidim, they marched deep into the wilderness and pitched camp in front of the mountain. There, under the shadow of Sinai, Israel settled. The peak towering high above them, a place marked for ages by the presence of the Almighty. Moses began his ascent, and Yahweh called out to him from the heights, saying, "This is what you must tell the house of Jacob, the sons of Israel. You saw with your own eyes what I did to Egypt, how I carried you on eagle's wings, bringing you close to me. Now if you will truly listen to my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession, set apart from all humanity, for the whole earth is mine. And you will serve as a bridge between the human and divine." This was the destiny Moses offered to the children of Israel. He descended the mountain and gathered the elders, laying bare before them every word that the Lord had spoken. The people answered with a single voice, saying, "Everything he has commanded us, we will perform." Moses carried their submission back. Then a voice spoke from the storm. I will approach you in a dense, dark cloud, so that the people may hear my voice and trust in your path forever. Moses returned their response, and the Lord gave him this command: Go and purify their minds today and tomorrow. Have them wash away their old identities and stand ready on the third day. For then the divine presence will manifest before the eyes of everyone at the foot of Mount Sinai. Moses had to draw boundaries, warning the people not to cross or touch the mountain. Anyone who lays a finger on it, human or animal, must die. No hand shall rescue them. They will be stoned or shot down. Only when the long horn sounds may they dare to approach. Moses walked down and did exactly as the Lord had commanded him. He purified their hearts and they washed their clothes. He warned them, prepare for the third day. Abstain from physical desire. When dawn broke on the third day, thunder roared and lightning split the sky. A heavy dark cloud swallowed the mountain, and a piercing horn sounded, growing louder and louder. The entire camp trembled with fear. Moses led them out to face the Absolute standing beneath the mountain. Mount Sinai was engulfed in smoke, for the divine fire had descended upon it. The smoke rose like a burning furnace, and the earth quaked violently. The trumpet blast continued to grow louder, and Moses spoke. The voice answered him like thunder descending to the peak of Sinai's summit, summoning Moses upward. But as he climbed, the voice warned him, go back down immediately and warn the people. If they rush forward out of mere curiosity, they will perish. Even the priests must purify their souls, or my power will destroy them. Moses answered, the people cannot climb for you, warned us to set boundaries and keep this sacred space holy. But the Lord insisted, go down now, then return with Aaron, but do not let the priests or the crowd force their way up to the Lord, or my anger will strike them. So Moses went down to the people and spoke to them, bearing the command of the one who dwells in fire and cloud. Then the divine voice spoke thundering from the cloud, saying, I am the Lord your God, who rescued you from the chains of Egypt, delivering you from the house of slavery. You shall worship no other gods before me. Do not carve any idols for yourselves, nor make any image of what is in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or deep in the waters. You must not bow to them or worship them, because I, the Lord your God, demand absolute devotion. I bring the sins of parents down onto their children, to the third and fourth generation of those who reject me, but show mercy to thousands who love me and follow my commands. Do not misuse the sacred name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will punish anyone who treats his name with disrespect. Keep the Sabbath day holy, setting it apart. You have 6 days to labor and do your daily work, but the seventh day is a day of rest dedicated to the Lord. Do not do any work on it, neither you, yours, children, your male or female servants, your livestock, nor the traveler staying within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord created the universe, the earth, the seas, and all life, resting on the seventh day. That is why the Lord blessed this day and made it holy. Respect your father and your mother, so that your life may be long in the land God is giving you. You must not murder. You must not commit adultery. You must not steal. You must not lie or give false testimony against your neighbor. Do not lust after your neighbor's house, nor desire your neighbor's wife, his male servant, his female servant, his ox, his donkey, or anything belonging to your neighbor. Beneath the mountain, the people witnessed the terrifying thunder, the lightning, and the sound of the ancient trumpet and the peak buried in thick smoke. Shaking with fear, they stood far off, completely overwhelmed. They begged Moses, "Speak to us yourself, and we will listen. But do not let the divine speak to us, or we will surely die." But Moses answered, "Do not be afraid. The Creator has come to test you, so that the reverent fear of him will guard your hearts and keep you from sin." Yet the people still kept their distance, while Moses stepped into the terrifying, thick darkness where God waited. There the Lord told him, "Speak to the children of Israel. Tell them you have seen with your own eyes that I spoke to you from heaven. Do not manufacture false gods of silver or gold to rival me. Do not carve these empty idols. Instead, build me a simple altar of earth. On it, present your burnt offerings and your sacred peace, sacrifices, your sheep and your cattle. Wherever I choose to have my name honored and remembered, I will come to bless you. And if you build an altar of stone, do not shape those stones with tools. Striking them with a chisel will profane them. Also, do not build steps leading up to my altar, so your nakedness will not be exposed before me. Then God gave Moses these ancient laws of justice to establish social order among them. If a Hebrew servant is bought, he is to serve for 6 years. But in the 7th year he shall walk away free, paying absolutely nothing. If he came alone, he leaves alone. If he was married when he arrived, his wife goes with him. But if his master gave him a wife and she bore him children, the family belongs to the master. The man must walk away completely alone, unless he openly declares his love for his master, his wife, and his children, refusing his freedom. In that case, he must stand before God. His master will pierce his ear with an awl against the door, and he will serve him for life. Now, if a father sells his daughter as a servant, she is not to be freed like the men. If she does not please the master who chose her for himself, he must let her be redeemed. He cannot sell her to foreigners, because that would break his covenant with her. If he selects her for his son, he must treat her as a daughter. Even if he marries another woman, he must not reduce her food, clothing, or marital rights. If he fails her in these 3 things, she goes free, paying nothing. If anyone strikes a person fatally, the killer must be put to death. But if it was an accident allowed by God's hand, I will appoint a place of refuge where he can flee. But if a man deliberately plots to murder his neighbor, drag him away even from my altar and execute him. Anyone who strikes their father or mother must be put to death. The same penalty applies to anyone who kidnaps another human being, whether they sold them or still hold them captive. If 2 people fight and one is struck with a stone or a fist, yet survives and eventually gets out of bed, the attacker is cleared of murder, but must pay for the victim's lost time and take full responsibility for their recovery. If a master beats his male or female servant with a rod and they die on the spot, he must be punished. But if the servant recovers within a day or 2, there is no penalty since the servant is considered his property. If men are fighting and hit a pregnant woman, causing her to give birth early, but there is no serious injury, the offender must pay whatever fine the husband demands, and the court approves. But if there is permanent damage, the penalty is severe. Life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. If a master destroys a servant's eye or tooth, the injured servant must go free as full compensation. If an ox gores a man or woman fatally, the animal must be stoned to death, and its meat cannot be eaten. The owner is not guilty unless the animal had a known habit of goring and the owner ignored the warning. In that case, the owner must also die, unless a blood payment is demanded, which he must pay in full. This same rule applies whether the victim is a son or a daughter. If the animal gores a male or female servant, the owner must pay 30 shekels of silver to their master, and the animal must be stoned. If someone digs or uncovers a pit and fails to cover it, and a neighbor's animal falls in, the pit's owner must make full restitution, the owner inheriting only the carcass. If one man's beast strikes another's down in fury, they split the living beast's price and share the loss. It is about shared human brokenness. But if the owner knew of his beast's violent nature, yet chose to look away, then he must pay in full, life for life, holding his own loss and building a just society. The Creator gave Moses deeper laws, exposing the shadows of the human heart. If one stole a neighbor's livestock, slaughtering or selling it, the cost of theft was heavy, 5-fold for the ox, 4-fold for the sheep. If a thief crept in by night and met a fatal blow, the defender was clean of blood guilt. Yet if the sun had already risen, blood was on the striker's hands. The thief owed full repayment. Lacking that, he was sold to pay for his crime. If the stolen beast was found alive in his hands, he owed double the value. If someone let their livestock consume a neighbor's pasture, they had to restore it from their own finest harvest. If a rogue fire devoured a neighbor's crops, the one who lit the flame paid in full. If a friend left silver or possessions for safekeeping, and a thief took them from the home, the culprit paid double. But if the thief vanished, the homeowner stood before God to search their own heart, exposing whether they had stolen from their brother. In every dispute of loss, the truth was laid bare before the divine. Whoever was found guilty repaid double. When a beast left in trust died, was hurt, or vanished in secret, without a single witness, a sacred oath before God would settle the truth. If the keeper swore innocence, the owner had to trust their word. No payment was due. But if theft was proven, they paid. If wild beasts tore the creature, the torn remains were brought, as evidence clearing them of blame. If a man borrowed an animal and it suffered harm, in the owner's absence he owed restitution. But if the owner watched, or if it was hired, no debt was owed, the fee covered the risk. If a man seduced an unbetrothed virgin, he had to pay her bride price and marry her. If her father refused the union, the price was still paid. Dark magic was outlawed. A sorceress was not permitted to survive. Bestiality was met with death. Praying to false gods was strictly forbidden. Worship belonged to God alone. Strangers, widows, and orphans demanded deep compassion and care. They were reminded of their own exile, recalling their days as strangers in Egypt. If these broken souls cried out under oppression, the Creator would hear and his anger would ignite. He would unleash the sword, turning the oppressors' wives into widows and making their children fatherless. If you lent silver to the poor among the community, you must not act like a predator charging interest. If a cloak was taken as pledge, return it by dusk, for it was their only warmth. If they cried out to God, he would listen, for he is compassionate. They must never revile God or curse their leaders in the land. Offerings of grain and wine were not to be withheld. The firstborn of sons and herds belonged to the divine. Each firstborn beast stayed with its mother 7 days, and on the 8th day offered to God. The nation was called to be set apart holy. They were never to eat wild, torn flesh found in the fields. Cast it to the dogs. Through these ancient decrees, a deeper blueprint was laid out to shape a community defined by justice, mercy, and deep integrity. They were warned never to spread lies or join hands with the corrupt. They must not follow the crowd into darkness, nor let the loud mob bend the truth. No bias was given to the poor, nor was corruption tolerated. Absolute truth was demanded in every judgment. Even an enemy deserved justice. If one stumbled upon their adversary's wandering beast, are these ancient laws actually maps of the human soul? If your enemy's beast collapsed, you had to help lift the load. Compassion wasn't reserved for friends. Protecting the weak was a sacred duty. No one was allowed to cheat the poor or poison the truth with lies and false accusations. Never condemn the innocent. Ban greed, because taking bribes blinds the wise and corrupts the soul. It twists justice. The outsider reminding them of their own dark exile in Egypt was never to be abused. They knew the cold ache of being a stranger. Then came the ancient law of rest. For 6 years plow the soil and reap the harvest. But the 7th year belonged to absolute rest for the earth, for the struggling hungry, and even for wild beasts. Man too had to labor for 6 days and stop on the 7th. This sacred rhythm restored everyone, even the servant and the outsider. Yahweh warned them to stay awake, never letting the names of false gods cross their lips, let alone worship them. 3 great feasts marked their year. First, the spring festival of unleavened bread, remembering their escape from Egypt. Next, the harvest offering, the firstfruits, and the final feast of gathering at the year's end. At these times, all men were to gather before Yahweh. They must not offer sacrificial blood with leavened bread or let the sacred fat remain until dawn. The very first of their harvest belonged in Yahweh's house, and they were forbidden to boil a young goat in its mother's milk, a boundary line drawn against dark pagan rituals. Yahweh promised his own presence would lead them, sending a messenger, a holy angel, to guard their steps and guide them to the place prepared. They must obey him, for Yahweh's name lived within him. If they listened, Yahweh would oppose their enemies and fight for them. This guide would lead them deep into the lands of the Amorites, Hittites, and Canaanites, the Hivites and Jebusites. Yahweh would wipe them out. Israel must never copy their dark rituals or worship their gods. Every pagan idol and sacred stone had to be smashed. Israel was to worship only Yahweh. In return, he would bless their bread, water, and heal all their diseases. No one would suffer barrenness, and they would live full, long lives. Terror would march before them. Yahweh would send panic to break their enemies and make them run. Even the hornet would sweep ahead to drive out the invaders. But this conquest wouldn't happen overnight. It would unfold slowly. Otherwise, the empty land would grow wild and be overrun by beasts. Little by little, they would multiply and inherit the soil. The borders of their promised home would stretch from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean, and from the harsh desert to the mighty Euphrates. Yahweh would hand over the locals, and Israel would drive them out. No treaties were to be made with them or their false gods. If those tribes stayed, they would become a trap, dragging Israel into dark corruption. The demand was absolute, total devotion to Yahweh alone in both life and worship. Yahweh called Moses to climb the mountain, leaving the crowd behind. Only he could approach. The others had to stay far away. Moses went down the mountain and told the people every divine decree and holy law. With one voice, the nation answered, "Everything Yahweh has spoken, we will surely do." Moses then wrote down every command. Early the next morning, he built a sacred altar at the foot of the mountain, erecting 12 pillars for the tribes of Israel. Young men were sent to sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings of bulls to Yahweh. Moses then divided the blood, pouring half into large bowls and splashing the other half against the altar. He took the book of the covenant and read it to the crowd. Once more they cried, "All that Yahweh has commanded we will faithfully obey." With that vow secured, Moses took the blood and threw it over the people, declaring, "This is the blood of the covenant Yahweh makes with you through these sacred words." Then a moment of deep, terrifying mystery unfolded. Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel climbed the mount. There they beheld the Elohim of Israel. Beneath his feet lay a pavement of brilliant sapphire, dazzling and pure as heaven. Can a mortal gaze upon the divine and survive? They beheld God untouched by death, and they ate and drank in his presence. Then Yahweh called Moses higher, commanding him to climb the peak alone, to receive the stone tablets, the laws and commandments carved to instruct the soul of Israel. So Moses stood with Joshua his assistant and began the climb. But before departing, he ordered the elders to wait, leaving Aaron and Hur to resolve any conflicts while he was gone. As Moses climbed, a dark cloud swallowed the mountain. The heavy glory of Yahweh covered Mount Sinai, dwelling upon it. For 6 days the mist hid the peak. On the 7th day, Yahweh called Moses from deep within the cloud. To the anxious eyes watching below, his glory appeared like a devouring fire crowning the mountain. Moses stepped into the mist, climbing higher. There, he stayed 40 days and 40 nights, isolated with Yahweh. Then Yahweh spoke, issuing a new charge: "Tell the Israelites to bring me a sacred contribution from every soul whose heart is willing." This was no forced tax. but a voluntary gift, an intimate act of devotion. They would gather gold, silver, and copper, rich fabrics of blue, purple, and deep crimson, fine linen goat's hair dyed ram skins, fine leather, acacia wood oil for the light, spices for anointing oil and incense, onyx stones and jewels to adorn the sacred garments. All this was to construct a sanctuary, a physical home, so Yahweh could dwell in their very midst. This design was not born of human imagination. Yahweh revealed a precise blueprint, a heavenly model for the earthly sanctuary and its holy treasures. They had to mirror it perfectly. First, the ark, crafted from acacia wood, plated inside and out with pure gold, finished with a golden border. 4 gold rings would secure its base, 2 on each side holding acacia poles wrapped in gold to carry it. Inside this ark, they would place the testimony, the tablets of the covenant Yahweh was to deliver. Over the ark, a mercy seat of pure gold would rest. Upon it, 2 cherubim would stand, forged from that same gold, 1 on each end. Their wings would spread upward, shielding the golden lid, their eyes fixed down toward it. There, between those cherubim, Yahweh promised to meet Moses and speak all his commands for Israel. Next came the table, also made of acacia wood, covered in gold, framed with a decorative border. 4 gold rings would sit at the corners to hold carrying poles. Upon this table, they would arrange the bread of the presence always before Yahweh. Then the golden lampstand, beaten from a single block of pure gold. It featured a central trunk and 6 branches, 3 per side. Every branch held 3 almond-shaped cups with buds and blossoms, while the main shaft bore 4 cups. 7 lamps in total sat on top, positioned to cast their light forward. Even the trimmers and trays had to be pure gold. Every single detail, every physical measurement, every subtle carving had to match the sacred blueprint revealed to Moses on the mountain. The divine instructions for the sanctuary continued as Yahweh delivered the exact blueprint. For the dwelling place of his presence, a structure set apart, beautiful, and perfectly ordered in every detail. The tabernacle itself was to be fashioned from 10 panels of finely twisted linen in blue-purple, and deep crimson yarn with cherubim masterfully woven into the fabric by a skilled artisan. Each individual panel measured 28 cubits long and 4 cubits wide, all perfectly equal. 5 panels were to be stitched together and the other 5 the same, along the outer edges. They would craft 50 blue loops on each connecting seam, allowing them to be joined by 50 gold clasps, binding the entire structure into a single sanctuary cover. Over this holy covering, they laid an outer layer 11 drapes of goat's hair to form the protective tent. These panels were larger, 30 cubits long, joined in 2 main sections of 5 and 6. The 6th curtain was designed to fold back at the very front, just like the inner drape's loops ran along the edges, but this time copper clasps locked them together. The remaining fabric would drape over the back and sides, shielding the sacred space entirely. Atop this inner layer, 2 more layers were required. One of dyed red ram skins, another of tough blue hides, protecting the sanctuary from the harsh desert elements. The skeletal frame was built from upright acacia boards, each 10 cubits high and 1.5 cubits wide. Every board had twin pegs to lock it to the next. 20 of these boards stood on the south side, and 20 on the north, resting on 40 silver bases, 2 anchoring each upright board. On the western back wall, 6 boards were set, along with 2 more to secure the corners, bound tightly at the top and bottom with rings. This completed the rear wall with 8 sturdy boards and 16 silver bases. Crossbars of acacia wood reinforced the entire frame, 5 bars for each side and 5 for the rear. The main central bar ran the full length of the structure, sliding through gold rings fastened to each panel. Every board and crossbar was to be covered in pure gold, creating a shining, unbreakable sanctuary. Inside, a heavy veil was woven from blue, purple, and scarlet threads and fine linen stitched with figures of cherubim, the creation of a master craftsman. This veil hung from 4 acacia pillars coated in gold, resting on silver bases. It stood as a boundary separating the holy place from the Holy of Holies. Behind this veil, the Ark of the Testimony with its mercy seat was set, the hidden heart of the divine presence. Outside this veil stood the table for the sacred bread, positioned on the north side, with the golden lampstand shining directly opposite on the south. For the entrance of the tent, a screen was made of vibrant curtain of blue-purple and scarlet thread richly embroidered. It hung from 5 gold-covered pillars of acacia wood, anchored in bronze bases. Every element, curtain clasp, board, and veil was built to mirror the divine blueprint revealed to Moses on the mountain. God then gave further instructions to Moses, focusing now on the altar of burnt offering, the surrounding courtyard, and the never-ending light kept burning before him. Every piece created an environment solely dedicated to worship, sacrifice, and the divine presence. This altar, the heartbeat of Israel's worship, was constructed of acacia wood and covered in bronze. It was perfectly square, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide and 3 cubits high. A horn was built onto each of its 4 corners, formed seamlessly as part of the structure, then plated with bronze. All its utensils, pots, shovels, basins, meat forks, and ash pans, were forged from this same metal. Beneath the altar, a bronze grate was fashioned like a net, with metal rings attached to its 4 corners. This grid sat halfway down inside the altar, serving as a support for the fire. Poles of acacia wood, covered in bronze, were slipped through the rings on the sides, so the altar could be carried whenever the camp set out. Like the sanctuary itself, it had to match the exact design revealed to Moses on the mountain. Surrounding this sacred space of tent and altar was an open courtyard. The south and north boundaries were measure 100 cubits long, enclosed by linen drapes on 20 pillars set in bronze, each fitted with silver hooks and rods. The west end spanned 50 cubits with 10 pillars, and the eastern side matched it. But the east wall had an opening, each flank measured 15 cubits of linen drapery supported by 3 pillars, leaving space in the center for the gateway. This entry, 20 cubits wide, was guarded by a beautifully embroidered screen of blue, purple, and scarlet threads hanging from 4 pillars set in bronze bases. The entire courtyard, 50 cubits wide and 100 cubits long, was enclosed by white linen hangings 5 cubits high. All its pegs and the pegs of the main tent were made of bronze, guaranteeing its endurance and absolute structural unity. The deep contrast between radiant silver and the raw, heavy strength of bronze anchored this sacred ground with profound meaning. At last, Moses was ordered to secure. Why did an ancient tribe crush pure olives just to keep a single endless flame burning? Aaron and his sons had to guard this light all night long, standing watch just outside the sacred veil inside the tent of meeting near the testimony. This fire was meant to burn forever before Yahweh, a permanent rule passed down through every generation of Israel. Then Yahweh told Moses to call Aaron and his sons, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, to serve as priests in his presence. This was the birth of the priesthood, a sacred calling for men chosen by God. To mark this solemn path, special robes were designed for Aaron, vestments representing holiness, honor, and beauty. But these clothes were not just for show. They mirrored the heavy responsibility and the terrifying closeness of standing before Yahweh. Then, Yahweh ordered Moses to summon the finest craftsmen creators whom he had blessed with deep wisdom to fashion these sacred garments. They would build a breastplate, an ephod, and a robe, along with a patterned tunic, a turban, and a sash, all woven with pure gold, blue, purple, deep, scarlet wool, and fine linen textures of royal power, purity, and heavenly majesty. The ephod itself, a highly detailed vestment, combined all these elements with masterful skill. 2 shoulder straps bound the front and back together with a matching sash, holding it secure. 2 dark onyx stones carved with the names of the 12 tribes of Israel were mounted in gold frames and fixed to the shoulders. They were to serve as a constant reminder before Yahweh, resting on Aaron's shoulders during his service. Beside this was the breastplate of judgment crafted with equal artistry. Double folded into a perfect square, it held 12 precious gemstones arranged in 4 neat rows, each carved with a tribe of Israel. The stones, carnelian, peridot, emerald, carbuncle, sapphire, diamond, jacinth, agate, amethyst, topaz, onyx, and jasper, rested in gold casings, their layout representing the wandering tribes. Golden cords and rings bound this breastplate tightly to the ephod, keeping it firmly pressed against Aaron's heart whenever he entered the sanctuary. And inside that pouch Moses placed the mysterious Urim and Thummim tools used for seeking divine guidance. They would rest on Aaron's chest, a constant reminder of his duty to seek Yahweh's will for the nation. Beneath the ephod lay a long robe colored entirely in deep blue. Its neck was woven with a strong collar like armor to prevent tearing. All around the lower hem hung golden bells separated by hand-woven blue and purple pomegranates of fine yarn. The soft chiming would ring out as Aaron moved inside the sanctuary, protecting him from sudden death in that charged, sacred space. Upon his head he wore a fine turban featuring a gleaming gold medallion tied with a bright blue cord. Engraved on it were the words, "Holy to Yahweh." Resting right on his forehead, it showed he carried the unseen guilt of the nation's spiritual gifts. Through this small devotion, the people's sacrifices were accepted. Yet Aaron was not the only one adorned with these garments. His sons also received tunics, sashes, and caps of honor. Moses had to dress them, anoint them, and consecrate them for their holy duties. Even private linen breeches were required to cover their naked flesh from the waist down. They had to wear these whenever they stepped near the altar, lest they trigger a fatal spiritual judgment. This was an eternal law. Every single detail of these ancient vestments, from the blazing gems to the detailed stitching on the hems, was deeply deliberate, designed not just for ceremony, but to project the divine order and heavy authority of those standing between humanity and Yahweh. This was more than clothing. It was armor for souls stepping into the terrifying presence of the divine. Next, Yahweh gave instructions on cleansing these priests, a mirror, showing us how we must prepare our own souls for transformation. This was no ordinary ritual. It was a heavy, sacred initiation sealed with sacrifice and water, an anointing that marked these men to carry a divine weight on behalf of everyone else. They chose a young bull to flawless rams and unleavened flatbreads mixed with rich oil. Wafers of fine wheat flour were carried on a tray brought straight to the entrance. At the threshold of the meeting tent, Aaron and his sons were washed a deep purification. Then Moses dressed Aaron in sacred vestments, the long tunic, the woven robe, and the splendid breastplate crowning his head, with a turban adorned with a pure gold plate. Moses poured the heavy anointing oil over Aaron's head, dedicating him as God's chosen priest. Next, Aaron's sons were dressed in tunics, sashes, and tightly wrapped headbands. With this act, the ancient priesthood became their permanent legacy spanning generations. Then, the blood rituals began. First, they led the young bull forward. The priests pressed their hands onto its head, transferring their guilt to the beast. Slain at the entrance, its blood was struck against the horns of the altar, while the rest pooled at the base. Inner fat burned on the wood, but the carcass, its meat, skin, and waste, was burned outside the camp as a sin offering. Then came the first ram. Once more they laid their hands upon its head before it was slaughtered. Its warm blood was splashed against the altar, the carcass carved into pieces, washed and consumed by the flames, a complete offering, a pleasing aroma rising to the Lord. Next, the second ram, the ram of ordination, was brought forward. They laid hands on it and took its life. But this blood was touched to their right ears, thumbs, and big toes, consecrating how they listen, act, and walk in this world. A total devotion of self. They sprinkled blood from the altar and sacred oil over the priest's fine clothes, sealing their holiness. Moses then took the choice fat portions, the right thigh, and loaves of unleavened bread, placing them directly into the hands of the priests. They waved them before the Lord as a solemn offering, then burned them on the altar. The breast of the ram was kept for Moses, his holy portion of the sacrifice, establishing a lasting law. This intense consecration ritual lasted for 7 full days. Each day, another bull was sacrificed for atonement, cleansing the altar, making it deeply sacred. Through this, the altar became so holy that anything touching it was instantly sanctified. Then came the daily ritual, 2-year-old lambs offered every single day without fail. One was offered at dawn, the other at twilight, alongside flour oil and poured wine. This steady offering occurred at the tent entrance, the exact threshold where God promised to meet and speak with them. His very presence would make the entire place holy. Here is the heart of the matter. God desired to dwell among his struggling people, to be their guide. It was the entire reason he rescued them from their heavy exile. This was the ultimate promise. I am their Lord, and I will dwell among them. God gave Moses exact instructions to guard and maintain this sacred space, where sweet incense and sacrifices would constantly rise as symbols of devotion and healing. First, he was told to build a golden altar designed solely for sweet incense, a compact gold-plated altar with horns. Rings and poles made it completely mobile, and it sat directly in front of the heavy curtain that veiled the Ark of the Covenant. This was the precise threshold of the divine encounter. Twice a day, morning and night, Aaron would burn fragrant spices, his prayers rising as daylight broke and faded. No strange offerings or foreign incense were ever allowed on this altar. Once a year, on the Day of Atonement, the high priest would purify its horns with sacrificial blood, keeping it holy before God. Then a strange demand was made, the price of a soul. When the people were numbered, every adult man paid half a shekel, a ransom for his soul, paid to the Creator. A flat rate of existence where the rich paid no more, the poor no less. It was a stark reminder that every life was sheltered by the divine. This silver would go to fund the sacred tent, standing as an eternal mirror of redemption. Nearby, a bronze wash basin, the laver stood between the sacred tent and the altar. Here, the high priest Aaron and his sons had to wash their hands and feet before they dared enter or burn the incense. To forget was to die, a vivid warning that only the pure can face the ultimate reality. This was a law for all time. Then came the command to craft a sacred anointing oil, rare mix of sweet, myrrh-fragrant, cinnamon cane cassia, and olive oil. Not some mere perfume, but a consecrated substance meant to mark the tent, the ark, the altar, and the basin, making every object holy. Aaron and his sons would receive this oil, set apart by this very oil to serve as priests. But this mixture was forbidden to the rest of humanity, kept strictly holy. Anyone who copied it or misused it would be exiled from the tribe. Finally, Moses had to blend sacred incense using stacked crushed murex shell and aromatic galbanum, along with pure frankincense seasoned with salt. It had to be crafted with absolute precision by a master perfumer, ground fine and placed before the Ark of the Covenant. It, too, was untouchable, never to be copied for personal pleasure. Violators would face absolute exile from the nation. Upon the peak wrapped in thick mist and divine fire, the voice of the Creator spoke once more, quiet and powerful. He said, "See, I have chosen Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, from the tribe of Judah." His selection was not merely about bloodlines, but a cosmic calling, destiny carved from the timeless. Divine wisdom, deep insight, and practical skill. Talents not learned in any school were poured directly into him like oil into a lamp. The divine spirit rested upon his soul, guiding his fingers to master gold and silver, to mold bronze and carve gems, with flawless precision, shaping wood with deep devotion. His craft was not manual labor, it was visible worship brought to life. The Creator paired him with Oholiab, son of Ahisamach, from Dan. To many others he granted artistic wisdom, enabling them to work as a single soul, creating every detail shown on the mount: the holy tent, the gold ark with its mercy seat, the table, and the lampstand, the altars, the ceremonial vessels, and the priestly robes for Aaron and his sons, the sacred oil and the holy incense. They designed nothing themselves. They only had to execute, molding what heaven had already spoken. Then the divine voice turned toward holy rest, just as a ruler seals a law with threat and promise. "You must keep my Sabbaths." He commanded a symbol between the Creator and the people, forever a sign of their chosen identity, showing He was the one who made them sacred. 6 days were for labor, but the seventh was different, holy, set apart like the very peak beneath Moses' feet. To violate it was to shatter the covenant. To keep it was to mirror the Creator who worked, then stopped and found rest. The Sabbath stood as a cosmic bridge between heaven and earth, proving that the master architect of the cosmos had chosen to live among mortals. And when the final words were spoken, when the divine law was complete, God handed Moses 2 heavy stone tablets of testimony, slabs carved not by chisel or human fire, but engraved by the hand of God, timeless, heavy, and alive. But down at the base, beneath the peak crowned in fire, time stretched into agonizing silence, and the crowd grew deeply anxious. Their eyes no longer sought the invisible God, but focused on their own mounting panic. They surrounded Aaron and screamed, "Come build us gods to lead us. Because as for this man Moses who dragged us out of Egypt, we have no idea what has happened to him." They ripped gold from their ears, from wives, sons, and daughters, shining fragments of memory. Aaron took the gold, shaping it with tools of human. From the blazing heat and molten metal rose a golden calf, gleaming, yet completely dead. The crowd roared, "These are your gods, O Israel, who rescued you from Egypt." Then a stone altar arose before the beast. They brought sacrifices. Dawn broke on wild feasting and laughter dancing under the shadow of their dark obsession. High upon the mountain, Yahweh spoke, His voice heavy with grief and burning anger. "Go down at once, for your people have corrupted themselves. How quickly they abandoned my path." He called them unyielding and stubborn, declaring judgment and telling Moses, "Leave me alone, so my fury can destroy them completely. But I will make you into a great nation instead." Yet Moses stood between heaven and earth, a desperate intercessor begging for mercy. He remembered the covenant sworn to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He asked, why let the Egyptians say He led them out just to slaughter them? And Yahweh, showing deep mercy, turned away from the threatened ruin. With the sacred stone tablets still in his hands, carved by the very finger of Elohim, Moses descended. Joshua heard wild shouting from the camp and feared a battle, but Moses knew the truth. It was the sound of revelry, not war. Then the idol appeared. The golden calf, the wild chanting, the chaotic dancing. Fury erupted inside him, and he smashed the tablets on the rocks, a shattered covenant before it was even received. Moses burned the idol, ground it to dust, cast it upon the stream, and forced the people to drink a bitter taste of their betrayal. Aaron trembled under Moses' fierce interrogation, offering a pathetic excuse. They threw gold into the fire, and out popped this calf. But their sin lay fully exposed, leaving the camp naked in disgrace. Moses stood at the gate and cried out, "Whoever stands with Yahweh, come to me." The sons of Levi stepped forward. With heavy, grief-stricken obedience, they drew their swords, and 3,000 died, judgment striking the community. The next morning, Moses spoke to the shattered survivors. "You have committed a terrible sin. Now I must ascend. To Yahweh, perhaps I can make amends." He climbed the mountain again, offering his own soul if mercy was denied. "If you will not forgive their sin, blot me out of your book." But Yahweh replied, "Only those who sinned against me will I erase. Now go lead this people. My messenger goes ahead of you. But when the day comes, I will punish their guilt. A plague soon struck, the bitter consequence of the gold idol they had fashioned with their own hands. Their joyous celebration fell dead silent. Dancing dissolved into dust. Beneath the heavy weight of broken stone and a fractured covenant, the people waited, deeply humbled beneath the mountain of Elohim. The heavy cloud still hung over Sinai's peaks when Yahweh spoke once more. His voice drifted down like wind over tired stone. Depart. From here, you and the crowd you led out of Egypt to the land I promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to their descendants I will give it. God promised an angel would lead them, driving out the tribes occupying those wild hills, the Canaanites, the Amorites, and all the rest. It was a land flowing with milk and honey. But his presence, his raw nearness, would not go with them. Because you are a stubborn, unyielding people, he warned, or I might destroy you along the way. Hearing this harsh warning, a deep grief gripped the camp. No fine jewelry adorned their bodies now. They stripped away their gold and their pride, standing naked before judgment, terrified of what Yahweh might do. From that moment on Mount Horeb, they walked without jewels, shadows of their past rebellion, following close behind. Moses, exhausted by the heavy burden of prayer, pitched the tent far outside the camp, away from the chaotic camp. He called it the tent of meeting, a thin space where dust met divinity. Whenever Moses walked out toward this tent, the entire assembly would rise in quiet awe. Every person stood at the entrance of their own home, watching him pass. And when this man of God stepped inside, the great pillar of cloud descended, blocking the entrance. There Yahweh spoke with Moses face to face, just as a man speaks with a close friend. But when Moses went back, one stayed behind. Young Joshua, son of Nun, lingered in the sacred shadow of the tent, refusing to leave that holy silence. Inside Moses, his heart heavy, turned back to Yahweh in desperate prayer. You command me to lead this. You tell me to lead this crowd, but keep your messenger a secret. You claim you know me by name, and that I have found grace in your eyes. If so, show me your path. Let me truly know you. Yahweh answered, My presence will go with you, giving you rest. But Moses, bold with sacred desire, urged, If your presence does not go with us, do not lead us any further from this place. How else will anyone know we have found favor in your eyes unless you walk beside us? Is it not your presence that makes us different from every other nation? Yahweh, touched by his plea, replied, I will do this very thing, for you have found grace in my sight, and I know your name. Yet Moses pushed deeper into the dark mystery, whispering, Show me your glory. Yahweh answered, I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will call out my name Yahweh in your presence. I will show grace to whomever I choose, and I will show mercy to whomever I please. But you cannot look upon my face, for no mortal can see me and survive. Then he offered a promise. Look, there is a place near me where you may stand on the rock as my glory passes by. I will shield you in the cleft of that stone, covering you with my hand, until I have gone past. Then I will withdraw my hand, and you will see my back. But my face must remain hidden. Down below, the echoes of a broken covenant hung in the quiet air. Yet Yahweh refused to leave them in ruins. He spoke to Moses once again, saying, Cut 2 stone tablets for yourself, just like the first ones, and I will write the very same words that were on those tablets you shattered. Then he summoned Moses to climb the sacred mountain once more, alone, under the pale light of dawn. No one else was allowed to follow. Neither human nor animal could even graze the mountain's edge. This was a holy place, where the voice of the Infinite would speak again. Moses woke early, gripped the heavy stones, and began his ascent up Mount Sinai. In the heavy mist, Yahweh descended and stood beside him. Then the supreme name was proclaimed. Yahweh, Yahweh, the mighty El, compassionate and full of grace, slow to anger, rich in loyal love, showing mercy to thousands, forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he will not let the guilty go unpunished, bringing the sins of the parents onto the children, even to the third and fourth generation. Moses, trembling in awe, fell to the earth in worship and cried out, "If I have truly found favor in your sight, my Lord, please come with us. Though we are a stubborn and rebellious people, forgive our sins and claim us as your own." Yahweh replied, "Look, I am making a covenant. Right before your people, I will perform miracles never before witnessed on this earth. All the surrounding nations will see what I can do, for my work with you is fearsome." Then came his warning. The land would belong to them, but they could make no treaties with its idols, tear down their altars, smash their sacred pillars, and cut down their wooden shrines. You must never worship any other god, for Yahweh, whose very name is jealous, is a passionate God. He warned them against blending with the locals and their gods, which would poison their souls. You must not cast any metal idols, he ordered. They were commanded to celebrate the sacred festivals like the Feast of Unleavened Bread in the month of Abib, marking their escape from Egypt. The firstborn of every womb belonged to Yahweh, both people and animals. They had to rest on the seventh day, even during busy planting and harvest seasons. 3 times a year, all your men must gather before the sovereign Lord Yahweh, the God of Israel. He promised, "I will clear away nations before you, and no one will covet your homeland when you journey to meet me. Bring the very best of your harvest to the temple of your God." And then that cryptic rule, you must not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. Then Yahweh instructed Moses, "Write down these words, for they are the foundation of my covenant with you and Israel." Moses stayed on the mountain with Yahweh for 40 days and 40 nights, tasting neither food nor water. On those freshly carved stones, the finger of God inscribed the sacred words of thee. When Moses finally walked down the steep mountain holding those new stone tablets of, "Why do we fear our own transformation?" Moses returned unaware. His face radiated blinding light, born of speaking with the divine. The people saw this terrifying radiance and shrank back. But Moses called out to them, and the elders slowly returned. He shared everything Yahweh had commanded them, and once he had finished, he covered his face with a veil. But whenever he stepped back to speak with Yahweh, he cast the veil aside. Coming back out, he would declare Yahweh's words to the waiting crowd, and they would witness that terrifying holy glow, a mirror of pure glory. Then he would cover his face again until his next encounter with the Creator. Then Moses called the entire assembly of Israel together under a vast desert sky that felt like a veil between the sacred and the everyday, and he spoke to them the profound truths that had descended from that cloud-shrouded peak. These are the instructions Yahweh has given for you to follow. First, he spoke of deep rest, that sacred pause built into every single week. Work for 6 days, but the 7th is holy, a Sabbath devoted to Yahweh. Do not even light a fire in your homes on this day. A spark of work was rebellion against heaven itself. Then his tone shifted to an open invitation, not a threat. Yahweh offered not just strict laws, but a call, a voluntary invitation to those with willing hearts. Bring an offering to Yahweh, he announced, from anyone whose heart is moved. Bring gold, silver, and bronze. Let the threads of deep blue, rich purple, and bright scarlet slip through your fingers. Offer fine linen goat hair, red-dyed ram skins, and strong, durable leather. Offer pure oil for lamps, sweet spices for incense, precious gemstones, and acacia wood. This was never meant to be a heavy tax. It was a shared gift, not forced from them as tribute, but flowing like a river from awakened souls. The message rippled through the desert camp like wind sweeping through palms, and the people moved. At first, they dispersed from Moses, but soon they returned, every single man and woman whose soul had been stirred. One by one they stepped forward with treasures. Gold flowed from their hands, pens, rings, necklaces, and delicate ornaments. The gold of Egypt, once worn in slavery, was now offered in true freedom. Skeins of vibrant thread were presented by skilled, wise-hearted women who spun blue, purple, and scarlet threads right inside their tents. They gathered soft goat hair spun by fingers guided by pure devotion. The tribal leaders brought glowing jewels, onyx, and precious stones to ornament the priest's sacred chestpiece and robe. Fragrant aromatics poured in sweet frankincense lamp oil, rich anointing perfume, and spices for the rising veil of smoke that would drift upward like prayer. There was zero pressure, only pure willingness. No coercion, just absolute joy. The construction of the sanctuary rested not on duty, but on spontaneous generosity flowing from deeply awakened souls. Then Moses addressed them again. Look, Yahweh has chosen Bezalel, son of Uri, grandson of Hur, from the tribe of Judah. The breath of God had filled him not just with raw talent, but with deep wisdom, sharp intelligence, profound knowledge, and a sacred creative vision to build beautiful things for the Creator. He possessed the steady hand of an artist, the vision of an architect, and the soul of someone who carves, weaves, and molds raw metal and stone until they sing with praise. Alongside him, Yahweh chose Aholiab, son of Ahisamach, from the tribe of Dan. Into both of their minds he poured not just artistic skills, but the rare ability to teach, to guide others in this holy work. Their fingers would fashion what eyes had never beheld, the dwelling place of God, woven of shadow and light, constructed by the hands of a devoted people who gave without needing to be urged twice. The work began in silence, not out of doubt, but from sheer awe. Bezalel and Aholiab, filled with a spark of heavenly artistry, stepped forward with every single person whose heart was moved and whose hands had been blessed with skills from God. They didn't arrive as exhausted workers under a heavy yoke, but as servants of a sacred mission, architects of the divine sanctuary. From the hands of Moses, they took the initial offerings, pouring in wave after wave, clean as morning dew. Day after day, the crowds brought more gold that had once hung on foreign captors' fabrics rich with vibrant dyes, sturdy selected timber, and stones that sparkled like fire, and water in their open palms. Nothing was forced. It cascaded freely as if Yahweh had opened their souls from within. The craftsmen paused their shaping to come before Moses. Their eyes held a quiet awe as they said, "The people have brought too much. This inner work has what it needs and more." So Moses sent a message, a quiet voice carrying through the camp like a soft wind of restraint, saying, "Bring no more." And the people, though eager, stopped. Their generosity had overflowed. Holding the blueprint of the soul, the skilled began their labor, weaving 10 fine curtains of linen, with threads of blue, deep purple, and crimson each, panel alive with winged guardians stitched by a master's hand. 5 sheets were bound to 5, by blue loops and golden clasps forming one sanctuary. Then came 11 curtains of goat hair, wider still, to shield the sacred tent. They linked these with copper rings, then covered them with dyed ram skins and thick leather, layer upon layer, protecting the deep. From standing frames of acacia wood, the walls rose, 10 cubits high and 1.5 wide, each fitted with twin joints in perfect balance. 20 frames stood south, 20 north, 6 to the west, with 2 wrapping the corners. Under them, silver bases held them fast, 2 for each board, a foundation for the dwelling. Bars of acacia crossed the walls, 5 on each side, with a central bar running invisibly through the middle, holding all in unity. Every board was plated in gold, with rings to hold the poles. Next, they wove the veil, rich and heavy blue, purple, and crimson linen, stitched with cherubim, those guardians of the sacred, woven by skilled hands. It hung not just to divide, but to separate the holy from the most holy, a boundary for the soul. 4 pillars of acacia held this veil covered in gold, standing on silver bases. Hooks of gold held the barrier its true weight carried in its purpose. Then they wove the outer screen for the entrance using blue, purple, and crimson threads, embroidered with an open, welcoming hand. 5 pillars held at their tops, and bands overlaid with gold, standing on bases of copper, the threshold between the outer world and the tent of inner glory. Thus the sanctuary began to rise not by command alone, but by willing hearts and hands, touched by the holy breath of the divine. Bezalel, whose hands were filled with sacred wisdom, stepped forward to shape the absolute center of this inner dwelling. From acacia wood he crafted the Ark of the Covenant, its dimensions precise, its form humble but destined for glory. Inside and out, he plated it with pure gold, framing it with a golden crown. He cast 4 rings for its corners and slipped poles of gold-covered acacia through them, built to carry the throne of the Jesus invisible. Upon it he made the mercy seat of pure gold, matching the ark exactly in size. From a single piece of beaten gold, he raised 2 cherubim with wings spreading upward, their faces bowed, gazing down at the seat of mercy. Their wings overshadowed them, place where the divine meets the human, a throne hidden in holiness between the guardians. Next, he made the table, crafted of acacia wood and covered in pure gold. A border was carved around it a handbreadth wide with a gold rim. 4 golden rings held its corners, and poles of gold-covered wood were set for lifting. Upon this table, the vessels were placed: dishes, bowls, spoons, and jars for offerings, all hammered from pure gold shining with devotion. Then Bezalel fashioned the lampstand, the menorah, from 1 piece of beaten gold. It rose with 6 branches, 3 on each side. Each branch bloomed with almond-shaped cups decorated with spheres and buds, as though the tree of life blossomed in the wild. The central stem held 4 cups, and below each pair of branches, a golden sphere joined them in harmony. 7 lamps crowned its arms with snuffers and trays, all from the same talent of gold, nothing wasted, nothing divided. He moved on to the incense altar, square and upright, built of acacia, and could this sanctuary be a map of our own minds? Overlaid in gold, its horns rose from the corners, gleaming with a golden rim. Do these heavy rings beneath its crown hold our deepest burdens, requiring gold-plated poles of acacia to carry our spiritual weight, so that even through exile and trial, we do not defile the sacred? Then came the holy perfumes, designed to heal our deepest wounds. The anointing oil and sweet incense. They were blended with a master's skill, using only the most precious and costly spices. Oil to heal, incense to rise, like desperate prayers weaving our invisible desires into sacred ritual. Every single thread of this inner temple was woven precisely as the Creator had commanded. No detail was simply finished, it was spiritually realized. The final labor carried the weight of our devotion and the breath of the sacred. As the sanctuary neared completion, Bezalel, with hands dedicated to sacred geometry, shaped the altar where our pride is consumed. Built from resilient acacia wood, wide and square, plated in copper, its sharp horns rose to confront our guilt, offering strength and redemption. He forged the heavy pots, forks and bowls, shovels and fire basins, all tools of fire and transformation, from solid copper, set apart for purifying flames. Beneath the frame, a copper grate suspended the fire, holding our sacrifices right in the center of the flame. Copper rings held the carrying poles to bear this heavy altar. They were acacia wrapped in copper, carrying our burdens through the desert without being defiled. This hollow altar became a chamber for burning away our illusions. From the bronze mirrors of the women who stood at the tent entrance, he fashioned a great basin of water resting upon a bronze stand. This water was meant for cleansing, a pool of reflection, both literal and psychological, forged from the gifts of those who surrendered their vanity and ego. An outer courtyard enclosed the tabernacle, built from fine woven linen that stretched between bronze pillars. Along the north and south sides, measuring 100 cubits 20, columns stood with silver hooks and bands. To the west, the screen was 50 cubits long, with 10 pillars, and the eastern entrance opened with a beautiful symmetry, framing the entrance. This gate was woven with blue, purple, and scarlet threads on linen, embroidered by hand. It rose 5 cubits high, matching the outer courtyard walls. Its 4 columns stood upon sockets of bronze, with hooks and tops that gleamed with silver. Every peg of the court and tabernacle was made of copper, anchoring heaven's pattern deep into the physical earth. Then came the sacred inventory, a detailed accounting of every soul and gift, recorded by Ithamar, Aaron's son, Bezalel, son of Uri, and Aholiab, son of Ahisamach, master artisans filled with divine wisdom, worked in perfect alignment. Every single measurement, every talent and thread was cataloged not for pride, but to prove their absolute faith. From the people's gold offerings, 29 talents and 730 shekels were gathered. 100 talents and 1,775 shekels of silver came from the community, each man 20 years and older offering a half shekel in sacred weight. These formed the bases. Under the sanctuary, a talent for each base. Foundations of pure silver, hooks, caps, and connectors for the pillars were forged from the rest. The bronze offering reached 70 talents and 2,400 shekels, casting the altar's holy utensils, the courtyard bases, and every single peg anchoring this dwelling place of our divine consciousness. Nothing went to waste. Every single element served a purpose, carrying the weight of obedience, not human ego. An earthly shadow of a cosmic pattern completed and waiting for the breath of glory. The sacred vestments designed for the beauty of service were finally finished. Using rich threads of blue, purple, and deep crimson, they wove garments for the journey into the inner sanctuary, crafted exactly as the divine blueprint had commanded. The high priest's ephod, woven with beaten gold, represents the spiritual identity we are all called to wear. Delicate gold wires woven through colored thread and twisted linen, a pattern fit for the divine service. 2 shoulder straps join the ephod at the top, each holding a dark onyx stone, etched like signet rings with the names of 6 tribes of Israel. They served as stones of memory, worn to carry the people before Yahweh always. The masterfully crafted band of the ephod matched the same. Skill woven directly into the vest, every single thread matching Yahweh's exact instruction. Next came the square breastplate folded to a single span. It gleamed with 12 precious stones, set in 4 rows, each gem carved with the name of one tribe. Carnelian deep sapphire, emerald diamond, and others all mounted in gold filigree. Braided gold chains joined the chest piece to the ephod, locking it so it would never shift, just as Yahweh commanded. A dark blue robe was crafted for the high priest, its collar reinforced like a coat of armor, so it would never rip. Along the bottom hem hung pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet, spaced with bells of pure gold, a sound following the priest into the sacred inner room, so he would be heard before Yahweh and live. Pure white linen tunics were sewn for Aaron and his sons, with their headbands, sashes, and undergarments all woven of clean white, with deep reverence and skill. Their sashes were stitched with those same colored threads, reflecting the honor of their sacred duty. On the priest's turban lay a shining gold plate bearing the words, "Holy to Yahweh." Tied with a blue cord, it sat upon his forehead as a mark of sacred devotion. With the clothing finally complete, the work of the entire dwelling place was shown to Moses. The sacred tent, its furniture supports beams and leather coverings, dyed red and blue, and the thick veil hiding the Holy of Holies, all were presented. The ark, its carrying poles, and the gold mercy seat. The table and the sacred bread of presence, the golden lampstand with its neat lamps and tools, the altar for sweet incense, the oil, and aromatic spices, everything was ready. The bronze altar, its metal screen and bowls, the basin and its base, the linen courtyard with its pillars and silver hooks, the colorful entrance screen. Every single peg and cord, all were brought. The holy garments were also delivered for Aaron's family to wear in the sanctuary. The builders had done everything precisely as Yahweh commanded Moses. No detail was forgotten, nothing added in pride. Moses carefully inspected all the work, and seeing it matched Yahweh's word perfectly, he gave them his blessing. The sanctuary of Yahweh was now completely ready. A sacred home built not just for glory, but for divine order and profound beauty, born from the hearts of a people moved to serve. On the very first day of the new year, 2 years after leaving Egypt, Yahweh spoke to Moses with an urgent command. Both grand and precise, the moment had come to erect the Tabernacle, the tent of meeting. This holy house, built through absolute obedience, was now to be set up. Every single item and piece of sacred furniture had its precise spot because this was not a structure born of human ideas, but the physical dwelling of Yahweh's presence among his people. Moses started by carrying the Ark of the Covenant deep inside the tent's hidden chamber screening, put it away with the thick veil. Behind that curtain sat the gold mercy seat overshadowed by winged cherubim where Yahweh's voice would sound. Outside the veil in the holy place, he set the table for the showbread on the northern side, arranging the loaves in order. Right across, along the southern wall, he positioned the golden lampstand, lighting its flames before Yahweh, bathing the room in holy light. Then he placed the golden altar of incense right before the inner veil and burned sweet incense on it exactly as Yahweh had commanded. The door of the tent was closed with the heavy screen marking the edge of holiness. Out front, Moses set up the bronze altar offering the burnt offerings and gifts as commanded. Between that altar and the holy tent, he placed the washing basin, filling it with clean water. From it, Aaron and his sons washed away the dust, cleansing their hands and feet before they entered or approached the altar following the ancient command. Outside the courtyard surrounding the sacred tent was fenced off with fine linen, the gateway curtain drawn shut. Every single object, the heavy drapes, the frames, sockets, and sacred tools, was built exactly as the divine voice commanded. Once the building was complete, Moses took the sacred oil consecrating the sanctuary and everything inside. The sacrificial altar and the wash basin were set apart, declared completely holy. Then Aaron and his sons stepped forward. They were washed, dressed in sacred robes, and anointed, marking the start of an eternal priesthood. And then the silence broke. A thick cloud descended and wrapped the holy tent. The heavy glory of the Lord filled the space so intensely that even Moses could not step inside. The God who shook Mount Sinai now dwelt among his people, no longer in terrifying fire, but in quiet, resting presence. This was no fleeting visit. It was the ultimate divine dwelling. A sacred home was built, and the Creator filled it with himself. From that day on, the cloud became their compass. When it rose, they packed and moved forward. When it lingered, they waited. By day, the divine shadow rested high above the sanctuary, and at night, a pillar of fire burned bright, a beacon guiding everyone through their dark travels. As the final scene of Exodus fades beneath that resting cloud, and a major new chapter is about to begin, a trial testing not just their simple obedience, but their very identity as a chosen people. Even with God living among them, their journey is far from over. These people, freshly purified and led by a divine cloud, will soon be called to do more than worship. They must learn to live in holiness. In the desolate desert, they must learn to serve God not just through ancient rituals, but in their everyday choices. This journey will be defined by deep failure. Human fear, pride, and betrayal are waiting. Even Moses, the ultimate prophet, will face the shattering limits of his own strength. Yet through everything, the divine presence will not leave them. The next book, Leviticus, does not move by the marching of weary feet, but by the turning of the heart, calling us to face our own shadows, seeking order. The infinite Creator who chose to live with flawed humanity now teaches us how to heal and find our true identity. See you in the next video.